3 days after my mother told me that 22 years in the Army was just a job, she set a blue folder beside my coffee and asked me to give her my house. Not sell it to her, not let her buy out my equity, give it to her. Scott sat across from me at the kitchen table with both hands folded like he was interviewing for a loan. His wife, Paige, had arranged the folder's contents in clear plastic sleeves. She'd even printed a cover page. Bellwether Family Home Transition. My name appeared underneath in smaller type. Mom needs security, Scott said. You understand that? I looked around the kitchen. The mortgage payment came out of my account every month. So did the taxes and insurance. The savings I'd used for the down payment had been earned across 3 deployments, during which I had learned that sand could get inside a sealed watch and that loneliness had its own time zone. Paige slid a pen toward me. You're the only person here who doesn't need this house, she said. My mother wrapped both hands around her coffee mug. She wouldn't look at me. The strange part wasn't that they asked. The strange part was that some part of me had known, from the moment I came home, that eventually they would. 6 weeks earlier, I pulled into the driveway on Bellwether Lane with everything I owned packed into a gray SUV and a rented trailer. The house looked better than it had in the photographs Mom sent. The boxwoods had been trimmed into severe green cubes, the shutters were freshly painted, and somebody had hung a wooden sign beside the front door that said, "Gather in white cursive letters." I sat behind the wheel for a minute studying that sign. After 22 years in logistics, I had developed a distrust of vague instructions. Gather what? Where? By when? Who was accountable if the gathering failed? My shoulder throbbed as I reached for my phone. The joint had been repaired twice, but it still objected to long drives, cold weather, hot weather, and certain enthusiastic sneezes. According to the Army, I had reached maximum medical improvement. According to my shoulder, nobody had consulted it. I texted Mom. I'm here. The front door opened almost immediately. She came down the walkway in house slippers, moving fast enough to make me nervous. At 68, Diane Mercer had silver hair she refused to dye, and the posture of someone who believed slouching encouraged bad luck. She yanked open my door before I could. You're thin. Hello to you too. You said you were eating. I did eat. Several times. She pulled me into a hug that was warm, familiar, and half a second too short. Then she stepped back and touched my cheek as if confirming I wasn't a video call. My girl, she said. That got me. I'd stood through my retirement ceremony without crying. I'd listened to people describe my career in phrases polished smooth from repetition, dedication, sacrifice, exemplary service, and felt mostly embarrassed that everyone had to stand around in uncomfortable shoes. But 2 words from my mother in a driveway, and I had to pretend I was checking the trailer hitch. She peered through the SUV window. Is that all you brought? That's all I own. Where's your furniture? Government housing isn't like a hotel, Mom. You don't get to steal the lamps when you leave. I know that. You asked. She smiled, but her eyes shifted toward the garage. The double garage door had been replaced with 3 tall windows and a dark blue entry door. I knew Scott had converted the space. Mom had mentioned it during one of our calls, though she'd made it sound like he was installing shelves and maybe a workbench. There were flower pots outside the new door, a welcome mat, wind chimes shaped like silver leaves. Before I could ask, Scott came out carrying a stainless steel travel mug. He was 39, broad through the chest with the softening jawline of a man who still ordered food as if he played sports regularly. He wore a black polo embroidered with Mercer table catering. "Look what the convoy dragged in," he called. "Still workshopping that one?" He hugged me carefully because everyone in the family had received detailed instructions about my shoulder, then slapped that exact shoulder as he stepped away. Pain flashed down my arm. He saw my face. "Damn, sorry. I'm fine. You always say that, usually because people keep asking while I'm still deciding." He glanced at the trailer. "You need help unloading? I'll take all the help I can get." "Sure. Just give me a few. I've got a supplier call." The blue door opened again and Paige leaned out. She wore leggings, a cream sweater, and an expression of delighted surprise that would have been more convincing if Mom hadn't announced my arrival 3 times in the family group chat. "You made it," apparently. She hurried over and hugged me. Paige always smelled expensive. Not like one particular perfume, but like a store where employees didn't let you touch things unassisted. She held me at arm's length. "Retirement looks good on you. It's been 11 days. Well, you look rested. I drove 9 hours. Mom touched my back. "Come inside. I made chicken salad. I should unload first. It can wait." Rain clouds were stacking up beyond the trees. It really can't. Scott checked his watch. "My call should only be 20 minutes. I've unloaded in rain before." Mom sighed. "Lena, you just got here." That was the first tiny scrape. Nothing worth reacting to. Her tone said I was creating difficulty by noticing weather. I unlatched the trailer. Mom stood in the driveway while I carried in the first 2 boxes. She kept trying to take one, and I kept moving them out of her reach. Scott disappeared through the blue garage door for his call. Paige followed after him because apparently supplier calls required witnesses. By the 4th box, rain had begun tapping the driveway. By the 8th, it was coming down hard. Mom held an umbrella over me in a way that protected neither of us. "Where do you want these?" I asked. She hesitated. "Let's put them in the basement for now. My clothes too? We'll sort everything out." I looked through the open front door toward the hallway. Is the back bedroom being painted? No. Carpet cleaned? No, honey. The rain drummed on the umbrella. Mom adjusted her grip. "Paige has some things in there." "What things?" "Just her exercise equipment." I waited. "And some clothes," she added. "Why? They ran out of room. In the garage." "It's not a garage anymore. You'll see." Scott did a beautiful job. Another box sat in my arms, slowly absorbing rain through the cardboard. The label across the top said "Bedroom Personal." Under that, in black marker, "Do not stack." Mom pointed toward the basement door. "Put that one downstairs, too." The basement smelled like concrete, laundry soap, and the faint dampness all basements claim is normal. Scott had stacked plastic storage bins along one wall, leaving a narrow space near the furnace. My frame photographs were there, wrapped in an old bath towel. I set down the wet box. The top photograph showed me with my first logistics team, all of us sunburned and squinting. The second was from a promotion ceremony. The third showed Dad and me at Fort Gregg Adams, back when it still had another name and Dad still had enough hair to complain about barbers. Those photographs had been in the hallway the last time I visited. I picked up the one with Dad. Mom had followed me down. Paige redecorated a little. I can see that. She has a good eye. Apparently her eye doesn't care for my face. Oh, stop. Mom swatted the air. "They're photographs, Lena. We can put them back." "Why did they come down?" "The frames didn't match." That answer was so purely Paige that I almost laughed. Almost. Mom reached for the picture, and I handed it to her. She wiped dust from Dad's face with her thumb. "He'd be so proud," she said. "He was proud when he was alive." I know. There were several responses available to me. None would improve the basement. I carried in the rest of my belongings. Scott reappeared when only the bookcase remained, apologizing because his 20-minute call had turned into an hour. He took one end, I took the other, and we maneuvered it through the front door while he gave me updates on his catering company. "We're finally positioned to scale," he said, walking backward. "Step." He stepped over the threshold. "We've got 3 corporate clients now. Real recurring business. Paige is handling brand development. Turn left." He turned right. My left, Scott. Your left is currently occupied by a wall. We wrestled the bookcase into the living room, laughing despite ourselves. That was the problem with Scott. He could make me want to strangle him and protect him within the same 60 seconds. Once everything was inside, Paige poured wine while Mom uncovered a bowl of chicken salad large enough to provision a small unit. We sat around the kitchen island because the dining table was covered in fabric samples, invoices, and glossy brochures for commercial ovens. I picked one up. "New equipment?" Scott's face brightened. "That's the next phase. "We're designing a dedicated prep kitchen," Paige said. "Where?" She pointed down. I looked at the floor. "The basement," Scott clarified. "The basement where you just put everything I own? That side is only storage. We're talking about the laundry side. Mom spooned chicken salad onto my plate. They're not doing anything yet." "We're pricing it out," Paige said. "The house has so much unused potential." I took a bite. Mom had added grapes, which I considered a character flaw but had learned to tolerate. "So," I said, "how long have you two been living here?" Scott and Paige exchanged a look. 4 months, Scott said. Mom immediately said, 3.5. 4, Paige corrected. I put down my fork. "I thought you sold the condo to fund the business." "We did. And your new place." "We decided not to rush into the market," Paige said. "Interest rates are ridiculous. We're keeping our options open," Scott added. Mom pushed the bowl toward me. "More? I'm still working on the first ambush." Scott leaned back against the counter. It made sense. "Mom had all this room and we're helping with the house. This isn't about whether it made sense. I'm wondering why nobody told me." "We did tell you," Mom said. "You told me Scott converted the garage." "He did. You skipped the part where he moved into it." She began gathering plates, though nobody was finished. "You were dealing with retirement. I didn't want to put more on you. I was coming home." "I knew that, to this house." The plates stopped clinking. Scott lowered his voice. "Were you planning to live here?" It was the way he asked that changed the temperature in the room. Not rude, not quite. Just surprised enough to reveal that my return had been discussed and somehow separated from the possibility of my physical presence. "I own the place," I said. "Obviously." "Mom told me the back room was mine whenever I needed it." "It is," Mom said quickly. From the hallway came a mechanical beep, followed by a cheerful electronic voice announcing, "Workout paused." Nobody spoke. Then Paige said, "I can move the treadmill." I looked at her. She lifted her wine glass. "It folds." Mom laughed too brightly. Scott studied the commercial oven brochure. I could have claimed the room. I could have pointed toward the basement and assigned every displaced object a new location. In the Army, if a space was designated for incoming personnel, you did not fill it with a treadmill and hope the personnel stopped existing. But this was my first night home, and my mother's chicken salad was sweating mayonnaise under the kitchen lights, and Scott had a stripe of dust across his forehead from carrying my bookcase. "I reserved a hotel for tonight," I said. Mom's face loosened with relief before she remembered to hide it. That was the moment I understood I had returned to my own house as a guest. I smiled, picked up my plate, and carried it to the sink. "Good," Mom said behind me. "That gives us time to get everything ready." I ran the faucet so I wouldn't have to answer. Outside, rain slid down the windows of Bellwether Lane, blurring my SUV and the empty trailer in the driveway. On the wall beside the back door, somebody had hung another white cursive sign, "This is our happy place." I washed my plate, dried it, and put it in a cabinet I had paid for. Then I asked Mom where she kept the spare keys. "Top drawer beside the refrigerator," Mom said. I opened it. Inside were takeout menus, rubber bands, 2 dead batteries, a screwdriver, and 1 brass key with a strip of masking tape folded around the top. "Mom, where's mine?" Mom turned off the faucet. "That opens the front door. It says, Mom." "Well, I know it's mine. Then where's mine?" Scott made a sound into his wine glass that might have been a laugh. I looked at him. "You want to share with the group?" "The labels are just labels, Lena. So are exit signs. Still useful." He set down his glass. "There used to be 3 copies. One was on your old key ring, one was Mom's, and I have one. Paige, she uses mine." Paige lifted her purse from the counter and produced a key ring substantial enough to anchor a boat. "I have my own now." Scott glanced at her. "What?" she said. "You had one made for me." "That's not the point." "No, I'm just building the inventory." I held up the key marked Mom. One for Mom, one for Scott, one for Paige, and my copy is wherever my old key ring went. Mom looked embarrassed. "I'll have another made tomorrow." I peeled off the tape and put the key in my pocket. "This one is fine." "That's mine," she said. It's my house." The sentence landed harder than I intended. Paige looked away. Scott's jaw tightened, and Mom's face took on that patient, injured expression she used when she wanted credit for not arguing. I could have softened it. Instead, I picked up the photograph of Dad from the basement and tucked it under my jacket. "Breakfast tomorrow?" Mom asked. "I'll call you. Don't drive in this rain if you're tired. I've got 900 miles of bad coffee keeping me upright." That isn't funny. It wasn't a joke. I kissed her cheek, hugged Scott and Paige, and left through a front door I could now unlock if invited back. The hotel was 11 minutes away, between an interstate exit and a 24-hour pharmacy. The room had gray carpet, a painting of a sailboat, and a heating unit that sounded like it was grinding coffee beans. I set Dad's photograph on the desk. In it, I was 24 and trying not to smile because I thought newly promoted soldiers were supposed to look serious. Dad stood beside me in a sport coat, grinning hard enough for both of us. He'd hated flying, hated military ceremonies, and hated any meal that required him to choose between two forks. He'd come anyway. I sat on the edge of the bed and called the front desk. "Do you have anything available for a few weeks?" The clerk paused. "You're already in a room. I'm trying to establish whether we have a future." That got a laugh. She quoted me a weekly rate, then suggested I speak to the manager in the morning. I thanked her and hung up. My phone buzzed. "Mom, I'm sorry things weren't ready. We are all adjusting." A second message arrived before I answered. "Mom, don't be angry with Scott. That was Mom's favorite form of triage. Find the person least likely to detonate and instruct her not to." I typed, "I'm not angry," then deleted it because it was a lie. I typed, "We'll talk tomorrow." She sent a heart. The heating unit coughed itself silent. In the sudden quiet, I could hear the couple in the next room debating whether the ice machine was on their floor. The man was sure it was. The woman was sure he had said that on the last floor. I lay back without changing clothes. For most of my career, home had been something I pictured in pieces. Mom's coffee cup beside the sink, Dad's socket set in the hall closet, Scott singing the wrong words to songs he claimed to love. Bellwether Lane had become part of that picture after I bought it. I imagined the red brick, the maple tree, my room waiting at the end of the hall. Apparently, the room had been doing cardio. At 6 the next morning, my body woke on army time and refused further negotiation. I drove to Bellwether Lane with coffee for everyone. Mom opened the door wearing her robe, her hair flattened on one side. "You said you'd call. I brought caffeine instead." She took the cardboard tray. "That's better." From the back bedroom came a scraping sound, followed by Paige saying something I couldn't make out. I stepped into the hall. The room looked smaller than I remembered. My old full-size bed had been pushed against the wall without a headboard. A treadmill occupied the center of the floor. Resistance bands hung from the doorknob, and the closet was open, revealing a row of Paige's clothes arranged by color. Paige stood in the middle wearing silk pajamas and dragging a white storage bench toward the door. "Good morning," she said tightly. "Morning. I was going to have this done before you got here. I didn't realize I was conducting an inspection." She pushed hair out of her face. "I don't want you thinking we took over." A pair of Scott's shoes sat beneath the window. I would never jump to conclusions. Her mouth compressed. I set the coffee on the dresser and grabbed the other end of the bench. "Lift on 3. I can do it. I know, it's easier with 2. We carried it into the hallway, turned sideways past the linen closet, and nearly collided with Scott coming out of the garage apartment. He wore sweatpants and no shirt. There was a pale scar below his ribs from an appendectomy he still discussed as if a field surgeon had operated under fire. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Invading Poland," I said. "Grab the treadmill. I told Paige I'd move all this later. She wants it done now." "I said I could do it," Paige snapped. Scott rubbed his face. "Can everybody take the temperature down about 10 degrees? Mom appeared holding 4 coffees. "I don't understand why this has to happen before breakfast." "It doesn't," I said. 3 people looked at me. I released the bench. "I'm not moving in." Mom's eyes widened. "Because the room isn't ready. Because I start work Monday and I need somewhere settled. We can have this cleared in an hour. I need a desk. I need quiet. I need more than one drawer. You have a whole closet, Paige said, then glanced at her clothes. You will. Scott leaned against the wall. It's temporary for us, too. I know. How long are you thinking? Mom asked. I'll find an apartment. Her face changed. You just retired. You shouldn't be wasting money on rent when you have a home. I looked at the treadmill. She followed my eyes and flushed. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. You just don't like how it sounds. Scott folded his arms. Okay, there's no reason to take shots at Mom. I'm not. You are, though. Paige stared down at the bench between us. She's taking shots at all of us. I had led meetings in which 12 people disagreed about the location of 37 pallets of medical equipment. Those meetings had included accusations, maps, and once a photograph of tire tracks. They had been easier than that hallway. I'm renting an apartment, I said. Nobody's being evicted. Nobody has to move a treadmill at 6:30 in the morning. This is a solution. Mom crossed her robe tighter. It feels like a punishment. That doesn't make it one. I picked up my coffee and walked into the kitchen. Mom served scrambled eggs and burned toast. Scott talked about an event he was catering for a law firm, and Paige explained that beige food photographed badly unless you added herbs nobody planned to eat. We avoided the obvious subject with such discipline that I was almost proud of us. After breakfast, Scott followed me outside. Hey, I turned at the SUV. He shoved his hands into his pockets. You know they moved in there after the condo sold, right? It's not like they threw your stuff out. I know. Mom likes having us around. I know. He studied me. You keep saying that like you don't. I know Mom likes having you around. That's not what I said. The wind had picked up, shaking rain from the maple leaves. Scott looked toward the house. Things happened while you were gone. They usually do. She had that fall last winter. My hand stopped on the door handle. What fall? His expression told me he hadn't meant to say it. What fall, Scott? It was nothing. She slipped getting out of the shower. Did she go to the hospital? Urgent care. She bruised her hip. Nobody told me. She told us not to. You're both adults. You can disobey an adult. She didn't want you worrying when you were dealing with your medical board. I stared through the front window. Mom was clearing plates. Paige stood beside her, talking with both hands. She was fine, Scott said. I put grab bars in the bathroom the next day. That's what I mean. There are things you don't see from wherever you are. There it was. Not cruel. Worse, because it was partly true. I'm glad you were here, I said. He nodded once, accepting the sentence as a concession. But being here doesn't make the house yours. His face shut. I didn't say it did. You didn't have to. He stepped back. Get your apartment, Lena. I plan to. Just don't make Mom feel guilty because we built a life while you were busy with yours. I got into the SUV before I said something we would both remember too clearly. The hospital had hired me to coordinate emergency supply operations across 3 facilities. My new supervisor, Sandra Ruiz, had told me during the interview that the job required calm under pressure, comfort with inventory systems, and the ability to speak politely to surgeons who believed urgency was a personality. I liked her immediately. On Monday, Sandra walked me through a warehouse full of surgical gloves, masks, saline gowns, and labeled shelves that made more sense to me than any room on Bellwether Lane. You can reorganize once you learn why everything is where it is, she said. Thank you. That was a warning. I know. I appreciated it. She looked at me for a second, then laughed. You're going to be trouble. Organized trouble. By lunch, I had found 3 apartment listings within 15 minutes of work. One was above a dentist's office. One had a kitchen the size of a coat closet. The third was a clean 1-bedroom with ugly brown cabinets, a narrow balcony, and a landlord named Mr. Cho, who removed his shoes before showing it. It's quiet, he said. From the unit overhead came a heavy thump. He looked at the ceiling. Usually. I signed a 6-month lease. When I told Mom, she was silent long enough for me to hear the television behind her. You signed already? Yes. Without seeing what we could work out? There wasn't anything to work out. You had a room. I had a future room. That's unfair. Maybe it was. I didn't apologize. She exhaled. Scott says you think he's trying to take the house. Scott says a lot when he's angry. He isn't angry. He's hurt. Those can coexist. Another silence. Then her voice softened. Are you coming to my retirement dinner next month? Mom had spent the last 3 years working mornings at the front desk of the physical therapy clinic that had once treated her. She'd announced her retirement twice and returned both times because, in her words, daytime television was designed to make people confess to crimes. Of course I'm coming. Marcy is organizing it. She wants to make a fuss. Marcy considers 6 balloons a restrained gathering. Mom laughed despite herself. For a moment, we were us again. Then she said, I just want one nice evening, Lena. No tension. I stood in my empty apartment, looking at the key Mr. Cho had placed in my palm. I'll be on my best behavior. I mean with Scott. I know who you mean. After we hung up, I added the apartment key to my ring. Bellwether Lane's brass key sat beside it, stripped of the tape that had said, Mom. 2 keys, 2 doors, and somehow I was paying for both places. I closed my hand around them until the teeth pressed into my skin. The teeth left 2 half-moons in my palm. By the end of the week, the apartment contained a mattress, 2 folding chairs, 1 lamp, and 14 boxes retrieved from Mom's basement. I left the bookcase at Bellwether Lane because moving it once had caused enough family damage. Scott offered to help with the rest. He texted at 8 Saturday morning, can be there around 10, bringing the truck. At 11:15, he texted again, running behind, catering emergency. At 12:30, Paige arrived alone in their SUV with a potted fern buckled into the passenger seat. That better not be a housewarming gift, I said. It's from your mother. I've killed Cactus. Your mother knows. She said this one is forgiving. Then it'll fit right in with the family. Paige gave me a sideways look as she unbuckled the fern. Are we fighting? I didn't know we had started. Good, me neither. She carried it upstairs while I went down for the boxes. The building didn't have an elevator, and by the 3rd trip, my shoulder had started its familiar, hot grind. Paige came down as I was lifting a box marked kitchen. Give me that, I've got it. You're holding it like it contains a bomb. If it contained a bomb, I'd have called ahead. She took the box anyway. You know, sometimes normal people just say thank you. Thank you. Did that hurt? Deeply. She laughed. It made her look younger and less arranged. We spent the next hour unpacking chipped coffee mugs, a skillet, towels, and a collection of utensils I had accumulated in furnished quarters across 3 states. Paige placed everything with the confidence of someone who believed drawers had natural destinies. Why do you have 7 wooden spoons? She asked. Operational redundancy. You have 1 fork. I know where my priorities are. She opened another box and pulled out a framed certificate. Where do you want this? In the closet. She read it. Meritorious Service Medal. It's the certificate that came with it. I gathered that from the words, Meritorious Service Medal. Closets through there. She leaned it against the wall instead. You're weird about this stuff. What stuff? Being proud of yourself. I'm proud of plenty. Name 3 things. I can reverse a trailer into a space without asking everyone nearby to stop talking. I make excellent cornbread. I once fixed an inventory error that had sent 4,000 left-handed surgical gloves to a unit that did not order surgical gloves. Gloves have hands? That's what I said. She smiled, then looked at the certificate again. Scott says you think we're freeloaders. Scott says things in completed paragraphs after I leave. He feels judged. So do I. Her smile disappeared. I opened a box before she could ask what that meant. Inside were 3 winter uniforms I had no reason to keep and couldn't bring myself to discard. Paige sat on the floor beside them. The condo sale didn't give us as much runway as we expected, she said. I kept folding packing paper. I didn't ask. I know. That's why I'm telling you. All right. We put most of it into the business. The garage setup is temporary. You've said. We're not trying to settle in forever. I looked around the apartment. Neither am I. That's different. You have options. You sold a condo. To build something. So did I. She knew I meant Bellwether Lane. Her eyes dropped to the uniform between us. Before either of us could make it worse, my phone rang. Scott's name appeared on the screen. Paige groaned. He's going to say the walk-in cooler broke. Did it? No. A client changed the guest count from 80 to 120. In Scott's mind, that's equipment failure. I answered. Mercer. Don't say your last name like I'm calling a command post. You called me. He exhaled. Kitchen noise clattered behind him. I'm sorry. Today got ugly. Paige is here. I know. I sent her. Paige shouted from the floor. You did not send me. She volunteered under pressure. I heard that, she said. Scott lowered his voice, though she was close enough to hear him without the phone. I'll make it up to you. Help Mom with the yard tomorrow. I was already going to. Then you're ahead. When we hung up, Paige was studying me. What? You let him off easy. I asked for help. You came. He was supposed to. A mission doesn't care who was supposed to lift the box. That sounds exhausting. It can be. She stayed until the kitchen looked like someone lived there. Before leaving, she placed the metal certificate on a narrow shelf beside Dad's photograph. I noticed after the door closed. I left it there. At the hospital, I began learning the difference between military urgency and civilian urgency. In the Army, people sometimes labeled an email urgent because lives or movements depended on the answer. At Greenfield Regional, people labeled an email urgent because they had forgotten to send it Thursday. Sandra watched me sort a stack of supply requests. You don't have to answer everything in the order it arrives, she said. It's time-stamped. So is spam. This one says urgent. It's for branded water bottles. I stared at the request. They want 2,000 by Friday. They wanted them last Friday. Why is it still open? Because the person who requested them went on vacation. I moved it to the bottom. Sandra nodded. Look at you, adapting. The work suited me more than I expected. I liked the warehouse's clean logic and the way a problem could be broken into quantities, routes, and time. I liked that Sandra told me when I was overstepping instead of smiling and resenting me later. I did not like being called ma'am by people 10 years older than I was. One afternoon, a receiving clerk named Andre handed me a clipboard. Need your signature, ma'am. Lena. Yes, ma'am. Are you doing that on purpose? Yes, Lena. Better. He grinned. Sandra said you'd be fun. Sandra is a known liar. The hours filled quickly. My apartment accumulated groceries, a second lamp, and a small table Mr. Cho sold me for $20 because his sister had moved to Arizona, and apparently Arizona did not permit tables. Mom called most evenings. We spoke about her last week at the clinic, the retirement dinner, and the fern, which she referred to as though it were an informant. Is it getting enough light? It hasn't filed a complaint. Touch the soil. I'm at work. When you get home. Scott's name came up only in practical contexts. He'd cleaned the gutters. He'd replaced the bathroom fan. He'd forgotten to take the trash cans out and then chased the truck halfway down the street wearing slippers. I laughed at that. Mom relaxed whenever I laughed at him, as if humor proved forgiveness. The mortgage came out on the 1st. 2 days later, Scott sent me a photograph of a stain beneath the kitchen sink. Looks like the disposal seal. I can replace it. I called him. How much? Maybe 200 with parts. That disposal is 3 years old. Things break. Send me the model number. Why? So I can check the warranty. A pause. Right, he said. Sure. It was under warranty. The replacement cost $28 in shipping. Scott installed it and sent me a picture of the finished work. I transferred him $50 for his time. He sent it back. I sent it again. He called. What are you doing? Paying you. I don't charge Mom for fixing things. You didn't. I did. It took an hour. Then you made $50 an hour. I'm not your handyman. Exactly. So I'm not going to use you like one. He was quiet. You make everything strange, he said. I make things clear. Same difference with you. He kept the money. Mom's retirement dinner was held in the back room of Bellwether Grill, a neighborhood restaurant unrelated to Bellwether Lane, but responsible for endless confusion when giving directions. Marcy Bell had reserved 3 long tables and decorated them with silver streamers, purple napkins, and 8 balloons, 2 more than her stated limit. She had worked with Mom at the clinic and been her closest friend since before Dad died. Marcy was 71, 5 feet tall, and constitutionally incapable of whispering. "There's our soldier," she announced when I walked in. "Please don't." She hugged me. "I haven't seen you in 2 years. You saw me on video at Christmas. You froze with your mouth open. It wasn't flattering." Mom stood near the cake wearing a blue dress I remembered helping her choose over a video call. She looked happy, genuinely happy, and when she hugged me, there was no hesitation. "You came. I said I would. I know, but you've been busy." It was almost an apology. Scott and Paige arrived 20 minutes late with 2 trays of appetizers from Mercer Table Catering. Scott wore the same embroidered polo he'd had on when I came home. Paige wore a dark green dress and looked tired around the eyes, despite immaculate makeup. The evening began well. Mom's former co-workers told stories about her correcting their grammar on appointment cards and refusing to let anyone throw away a reusable binder clip. Scott did an impression of her answering the clinic phone that made her laugh until she had to remove her glasses. I gave her a fountain pen engraved with her name. "So you can write your television confessions," I said. She kissed my cheek. After dinner, Marcy stood to make a toast. She praised Mom's steadiness, her loyalty, and the way she had survived losing Dad without letting grief turn the house dark. Then she looked at me, and Diane raised a daughter who spent 22 years serving this country and still made sure her mother had a roof over her head. My stomach tightened. Marcy lifted her glass. "We're proud of you too, Lena." People murmured agreement. Someone clapped. Across the table, Scott stared at his plate. I raised my glass toward Mom. "Tonight is about her." "Yes," Scott said. "It should be." His tone cut through the room. Paige touched his wrist. "Scott." "No, it's fine." He smiled without humor. "It always happens." Lena walks into a room and everybody thanks her for leaving. Mom's face went pale. Marcy sat down slowly. "I didn't ask anyone to thank me," I said. "You don't have to. People see a uniform and fill in the heroic parts. I'm not wearing a uniform. You know what I mean." Paige said, "He's saying he was the one physically here." I understood him. Scott looked at Mom. "Who took you to urgent care? Who fixed the bathroom? Who came every time you called?" "I'm grateful," Mom said. "Then say it. I've said it many times. Not when she's in the room." The silence embarrassed everyone except Scott. Paige's hand remained on his wrist. The Army paid Lena. It gave her housing, food, health care. I'm not saying she didn't work hard, but it wasn't like she gave everything away for free. Mom turned to me, pleading before she even spoke. "Your service was just a job, honey. Scott was the one who was actually here." I set down my glass. Then I asked, very quietly, "Would you like me to tell everyone what that job paid for?" Mom's eyes flicked toward Marcy, then toward the people from the clinic. "This isn't the time," she said. "You decided it was the time when you described my life for me. I was trying to stop an argument by agreeing with him." Scott pushed his chair back an inch. "Don't drag her into this." She climbed in. "Lena," Mom said sharply. There it was, my name in the voice that used to stop Scott and me from throwing cereal at each other. For one ridiculous second, my body responded before my mind did. "Sit down. Be quiet. Don't embarrass your mother." Then I remembered I was 43 years old and had just been told that the work funding half the table's lives did not count because I had been paid for it. I looked at Scott. "Who covered Mom's rent after Dad died?" His expression hardened. "You helped. For 41 months. No one asked you to do that. Mom did." Mom's napkin twisted between her fingers. I continued. "Who paid off the equipment balance from your first restaurant when the lender started calling her because she'd guaranteed it?" A woman from the clinic suddenly became fascinated by her water glass. Scott's face darkened. I paid you back. You paid back some of it. That was between us. It was. Until you turned this into a public measurement of who showed up. Paige removed her hand from his wrist. Nobody is denying you sent money. Sent money, I repeated. What do you want me to call it? Mine. She blinked. The money was mine. It did not appear because the army tucked me into bed every night and left cash under my pillow. I didn't say that. You said I was given food, housing, and health care, as if that meant the rest was free. Scott leaned forward. You want a medal for paying bills now? No, I have medals. They're in a closet. Marcy made a choking sound that might have been an unsuccessful attempt not to laugh. Mom shot her a look, and Marcy covered it by coughing into her napkin. I regretted the line immediately, not because it was false, because it was good enough to make Scott look foolish, and I had known that before I said it. Mom's voice dropped. You're keeping score. I keep records. There's a difference. Families don't keep records. Families absolutely keep records. They just call them memories when the numbers favor them. Her eyes filled. That took the fight out of me faster than any argument could have. I looked around the table at the silver streamers, the melting ice in the glasses, and the cake with happy retirement, Diane written in purple icing. Marcy had put little sugar flowers around the border. One had fallen sideways. I'm sorry, I said to Mom. You're right. This is your dinner. Scott laughed under his breath. That's it? What would you prefer? You don't get to dump all that on the table and walk away. You brought it to the table, and you brought a ledger. No. If I had brought a ledger, this conversation would be much longer. Mom covered her face for a moment. I stood. Happy retirement. Lena, sit down. I'm not going to make this worse. You already did, Scott said. I looked at him. So did you. Paige stared at the tabletop. Marcy rose as I picked up my purse. I'll walk you out. You don't have to. I know. That's what makes it generous. Outside, the evening was warm and smelled like asphalt and fried onions from the restaurant kitchen. Marcy followed me past the front windows, where the people inside were pretending not to watch us. She waited until we reached my SUV. I'm sorry, she said. You didn't say it. I made the toast. You said something kind. I also poked a bruise I knew was there. I unlocked the door but didn't open it. Did you know he felt that way? Scott has felt that way since your first promotion. That stopped me. Marcy crossed her arms. Your mother showed me the photograph. You had those gold bars on your uniform, and Scott had just closed the restaurant. He asked her why everybody celebrated you for doing well and treated him like a criminal for struggling. He wasn't treated like a criminal. I know that. He didn't. Why didn't anyone tell me? What would you have done from 2,000 miles away? I looked back at the windows. Marcy touched my arm, careful to avoid my bad shoulder. Your mother shouldn't have said what she said. She meant enough of it. She meant that he was physically close. She's confused proximity with sacrifice for a long time. You're defending her. I'm explaining her. Defense would require better material. That was Marcy. She could make a sentence sting and bandage it at the same time. I opened the door. She said, Don't let one ugly dinner turn into 6 quiet months. I'm not the one who needs to make the first call. No, but you're the one most capable of surviving without it. I drove home before she could say anything else useful. Paige texted while I was brushing my teeth. Tonight was awful. I set the phone down. It buzzed again. Scott was out of line. A third message. So was your mom. I waited. And you didn't have to list every dollar in front of everyone. There it was. I typed. He asked who showed up. I answered. 3 dots appeared, vanished, then appeared again. Money isn't the only way to show up. I wrote. I know. She replied with a thumbs up that somehow felt hostile. Mom didn't call that night. She didn't call the next morning either. At work, I checked my phone often enough that Sandra finally noticed. You expecting something? She asked. Possibly an apology. So no. We were in the warehouse reviewing expiration dates on emergency respiratory supplies. Sandra capped her marker. Family? What gave it away? You look at your phone like you want it to ring and also want to throw it into traffic. That obvious? To me. I scanned another label. My mother had a retirement dinner. Bad cake? The cake was innocent. Sandra waited. I appreciated that. Most people filled silence because they assumed it was broken. My brother and I disagreed over what counts as being there for someone, I said. Who won? No one. That's why it was family. She uncapped the marker. If you need an afternoon, take it. I don't. I didn't say you did. At lunch, Mom left a voicemail. Hi, honey. I hope work is going well. I think we all said things we didn't mean. Scott wants us to sit down and talk, and I agree. No audience this time, just family. Wednesday at 6? Call me. She never mentioned what she had said. I listened twice to make sure. On Wednesday, I arrived at Bellwether Lane at 5:58. My key opened the front door, but I knocked anyway. Mom answered so quickly she must have been standing in the hall. Thank you for coming. You invited me. She hugged me. I let her. The kitchen table had been cleared of catering brochures and covered with 4 white placemats. Coffee waited in Mom's blue pot. Paige sat at the far end with a blue folder in front of her. Scott stood by the sink, staring into the backyard. No one had set out food. That was when I knew it wasn't an apology. Sit, Mom said. I took the chair nearest the door. She poured coffee and slid the sugar bowl toward me, though I drank it black. Her hands shook slightly. I wanted to reach for them. I didn't. Scott finally turned around. We need to talk about the house. I looked at the blue folder. Paige opened it. Clear plastic sleeves held printed estimates, a property valuation from a real estate website, a rough drawing of the backyard, and a document with several signature lines. On the cover, in a font usually used for spa brochures, she had printed Bellwether Family Home Transition. My name was underneath, small. Mom needs security, Scott said. You understand that? She has security. She lives in a house she doesn't own. She knew that when I bought it. Mom flinched. I know you bought it, Lena. Do you? Paige pushed the folder toward me. Can we not start from a defensive place? What place would you recommend? A practical one. I opened the folder. Their proposal was half business plan and half family wish list. I would transfer the house to Mom. Scott would arrange financing based on the equity. Some of the money would renovate the basement into a commercial prep kitchen. Another portion would be reserved for a small studio behind the converted garage. A box beside that item said, Future Lena Space. I tapped it. A shed? It would be a detached studio, Paige said. Eventually, Scott pulled out the chair across from me. You'd still have a place here. I have a place here now. I own all of them. Mom closed her eyes. Scott's voice sharpened. This is exactly what I mean. You turn everything into ownership. We are discussing ownership. We're discussing family. Then why are there signature lines? Paige took a controlled breath. The company is growing, but we can't keep renting commercial kitchen time. Building here would lower overhead. The house has appreciated. It makes no sense to leave all that value trapped when it could help everyone. Everyone? Mom would own her home. Scott and I would grow the business. You'd have your studio. Eventually. She looked away. I turned another page. How long have you been working on this? Mom said, We talked after dinner. Paige said nothing. I looked at her. You made contractor calls, drew estimates, priced a refinance, and formatted a presentation in 3 days? Scott leaned forward. We discussed possibilities before. Before I came home? No. Before the dinner? He didn't answer. The room became very quiet. Mom wrapped both hands around her mug. We didn't know how to bring it up. Then the dinner didn't cause this conversation. It showed us we needed to clear the air, Paige said. No, it showed you I was less likely to agree after hearing what you actually thought. Scott stood again. Sitting had apparently become intolerable. You have a pension, a salary, health care, and your own apartment. You're one person. Mom needs the house, and we need a chance to make this company work. No spouse? Paige said softly. No one depending on you. My eyes went to Mom. She looked down. There are moments when anger arrives hot, and moments when it arrives so cold it clarifies everything. I closed the folder. No. Scott blinked. You haven't read all of it. I've read enough. Lena, I am not transferring Bellwether Lane. I am not borrowing against it for the company. I am not trading a house I own for the promise of a studio in its backyard. Mom's mouth trembled. Then what are we supposed to do? I stood and left the pen exactly where Paige had placed it. Live in the house I'm already paying for. Mom rose so quickly, coffee sloshed over the rim of her mug. You don't have to say it like that. Like what? Like I'm living on your charity. I didn't say charity. You said you're paying for me to live here because you asked what you were supposed to do. You're supposed to keep doing exactly what we agreed. Scott gave a short laugh. There's the contract. There is no contract. Not on paper. You just keep it in your head and bring it out whenever you want everyone to remember who has power. I looked at Mom. Have I ever threatened to make you leave? No. Have I ever raised the payment? She stared at the coffee spreading across the table. You know I only pay utilities, because that was the agreement. The agreement, Scott repeated. I turned toward him. What word would you prefer? Family. Family isn't a financial term. It is to you. Paige pulled paper towels from the holder and began blotting the spill. She did it methodically, moving the blue folder out of danger first. Mom's voice was thin. When you bought this place, you said it was my home. It is your home. But not really. Yes, really. If you can sit there and tell me what I'm allowed to do with it, it isn't mine. That's correct. It isn't yours. Her face folded. I hated myself the instant I said it. Not because it was untrue. Because I had chosen the hardest version of the truth and thrown it directly at her. Mom. She walked out of the kitchen. Scott pointed toward the hallway. You happy? No. You bought the place because she was scared. Now you're using that fear to keep her in line. I'm keeping her house out of your business. My business is why I need the equity. My equity. There you go again. What do you want me to call it, Scott? A magical family resource? I want you to admit you don't trust me. I don't trust this plan. That's not what I asked. I watched Paige fold the wet paper towels into a neat square. No, I said. I don't trust you with the house. Scott nodded as if I had confirmed something useful. Great, it isn't great. No, it is. At least now everybody knows. You asked me to put Mom's home behind a business that isn't stable yet. You don't know anything about how stable it is. Then show me your books. He stared at me. You want me to risk the house? I said, but asking for the numbers is an insult? Paige dropped the wet towels into the trash. The numbers aren't ready to present. They were ready enough for the property valuation. That's different. It usually is when someone wants my signature. Scott grabbed the folder. Get out. This is my... I stopped. His eyes dared me to finish. I picked up my purse instead. Tell Mom I'm sorry for how I said it. Tell her yourself. She doesn't want to see me right now. You're very good at deciding what people want from far away. I left before I proved him right. My phone began ringing before I reached the apartment. The first call was from Aunt Beverly, Dad's older sister, who lived in Ohio and generally contacted us only for deaths, weddings, and family conflicts in which she had no current information. I heard you and Diane had a disagreement, she said. That was fast. Scott called me. Of course he did. He's upset. Of course he is. She sighed. Lena, sarcasm is a wall. Aunt Bev, you once hung up on a pharmacist because she pronounced your name wrong. That was different. She had my prescription. I sat at my new table and rubbed the knot beside my shoulder blade. What did Scott tell you? That you won't put Diane's name on the house and might ask them all to leave. I didn't say either of those things. Would you put her name on it? No. Well, then one of those things is true. I closed my eyes. Aunt Beverly softened her voice. Your mother is getting older. So am I. It's happening everywhere. She wants to know she has something of her own. She has her retirement income, her savings, Dad's things, and permanent use of a house she couldn't have afforded otherwise. Permanent? As far as I'm concerned, that sounds like there are conditions. The condition is that she can't give the house to Scott because it isn't hers. That boy has always needed more help. He's 39. That doesn't make him less your brother. No, it makes boy inaccurate. She was quiet, then said, "You've always been the strong one." There are phrases people use as compliments when they're preparing to hand you more weight. "I have to go," I said. "Don't shut everyone out." I answered the phone. I hung up and put it face down. Scott's campaign continued in smaller ways. A cousin I hadn't heard from in a year sent a message saying homes mattered more than money. Someone else posted a quote in the family group chat about generosity requiring no recognition. Nobody named me, which allowed them to feel civilized. Marcy called 2 days later. "I assume you've been informed that you're a land baron now. That's the rumor. Your mother says you want to control who visits the house." I said I wouldn't finance Scott's prep kitchen. Yes, those are apparently the same sentence. I smiled despite myself. "How is she?" "Angry, hurt, worried. Also, she bought you a set of bath towels because she saw them on sale. That sounds like her. They're gray." Also sounds like her. Marcy paused. She doesn't understand how ownership works emotionally. I'm not sure I do either. She thinks because she lives there, loving the house should count as equity. Scott thinks installing grab bars counts as equity. He did a nice job on those grab bars. So did the person I paid to replace the roof. See? This is why no one invites you to sentimental arguments. My physical therapist was less amused by the state of my shoulder. Beth stood behind me while I raised my right arm as far as I could. She was in her 50s, with cropped red hair and the blunt manner of someone who had spent decades watching people lie about pain. "That's worse," she said. "It's tighter. That's what worse means in this room. I moved boxes. You were told not to lift more than 20 pounds repeatedly. The boxes weren't repetitive. They had different things in them." She lowered my arm. "You also hold tension, like it's classified." I'm relaxed. "Your neck is trying to eat your ears." She worked on the scar tissue until my eyes watered, then gave me 2 new exercises and a lecture about inflammation. I listened. Following instructions had never been my problem. Following instructions that required me to sit still while other people mishandled things was different. At work, I stopped checking the family group chat. At home, I assembled a narrow bookshelf and put Dad's photograph on the top. Paige's fern developed 1 yellow leaf. Mom texted to tell me I was overwatering it. I hadn't told her. Marcy was reporting plant status. I let that absurd little pipeline remain open. Mom and I went 11 days without speaking directly. On the 12th, she called at 7:40 in the morning. "Are you busy?" "I'm walking into work." "Oh, then never mind. What do you need?" "Nothing. I just wanted to hear your voice." I stopped beside the employee entrance while people streamed around me. "I'm here." She exhaled, shaky and relieved. We spoke for 5 minutes about nothing. The weather, her fountain pen, a squirrel that had developed a personal grievance against the bird feeder. Neither of us apologized. Neither of us mentioned the folder. Before hanging up, she said, "Scott thinks you hate him." "I don't." I told him. "Thank you. He doesn't believe me. That's his choice. Everything isn't a choice, Lena." I watched Andre struggle through the doors with a paper sack and 2 coffees. He saw me and held one up in an offer. "No," I told Mom, "but that is." The distance eased without disappearing. Mom called every few days. I took her to lunch once, and she spent most of it describing former patients from the clinic as if I knew them personally. When I asked about Scott and Paige, she said they were working hard. I didn't ask whether they had abandoned the refinancing idea. She didn't volunteer. The house remained financially quiet. The mortgage cleared, the insurance cleared. Mom paid the electric and water bills as usual. Scott sent no repair photographs. I wanted to believe that meant nothing had broken. Then Mom called at 10:15 on a Thursday night. Something's wrong with the kitchen floor. I was already reaching for my keys. What happened? It's wet. From where? I don't know. The dishwasher, maybe. Turn off the valve under the sink. Which valve? Put Scott on. He and Paige aren't here. Where are they? An event. Of course they were. I'm coming. Don't run the dishwasher. Put towels down, but don't step where the floor is slick. The drive took 12 minutes. The front door was unlocked. Mom stood in the kitchen surrounded by every towel she owned, including the good blue ones she normally reserved for guests who never came. Water shone between the floorboards. I opened the cabinet, shut the dishwasher supply valve, and pulled the bottom panel. The insulation underneath was soaked. When I pressed the edge of one plank, brown water rose through the seam. This didn't start tonight. Mom hugged herself. Paige said it made a grinding noise. When? I don't know. Mom. Last week, maybe. I stared at her. Why didn't anyone call me? She said she texted Scott. Scott doesn't own the house. You get angry whenever we mention repairs. I ask questions. You make people feel interrogated. Water doesn't care how my questions make it feel. Headlights swept across the kitchen window. Scott and Paige came in through the converted garage, both dressed in black catering clothes. Paige stopped when she saw the towels. Oh, good, she said. You finally came. I straightened slowly. Finally? I told Scott the dishwasher was leaking. Scott looked at her. You said it was making noise. I said there was water near the base. You absolutely did not. She turned on him. I sent you a picture. You sent a picture of a wine glass that broke inside it. I sent both. I held out my hand. Show me. Neither moved. Show me the messages. Paige crossed her arms. This is exactly why nobody wanted to tell you. Every repair becomes a hearing. I looked past her into the garage apartment. Stacks of black catering trays lined the counter. Plastic tubs sat beside the sink, full of utensils and serving spoons. A rolling rack held sheet pans spotted with baked-on sauce. On the wet kitchen floor, caught beneath the edge of the dishwasher, was a sprig of rosemary tied with the small gold string Paige used on Mercer table plates. I picked it up. How much business equipment have you been washing in my kitchen? I asked. Scott and Paige looked at each other. Mom sat down at the table. No one answered. Paige reached for the rosemary sprig. I closed my fingers around it. It was one dinner, she said. Scott looked at her. What was? We rinsed the serving pieces here after the Langford event. That was 3 weeks ago. And 2 other times. You told me you took everything to the rental kitchen. The booking ends at 11. They charge another $200 if we stay past it. I looked into the converted garage. Those tubs aren't from 2 dinners. We store things here, Scott said. I asked how much you wash here. Not much. Give me a number. He threw up his hands. This isn't a supply depot. No, a supply depot could answer the question. Mom flinched at my tone. I lowered it. Paige pulled out her phone and scrolled through photographs. We only run small items through the dishwasher. Utensils, tasting plates. Nothing heavy. Sheet pans? Those don't fit. That wasn't my question. Sometimes we soak them in the sink. I looked at Scott. You turn the kitchen into part of your operation. We clean up here occasionally. You listed the basement renovation as necessary because you were renting commercial kitchen space. We are. But you're also using this one for cleanup. Mom spoke from the table. They're trying to save money. I looked at her. She shrank into her chair but continued. They're working so hard, Lena. You don't see when they come home at 2 a.m. No. I see the water coming through the floor. That could have happened anyway, Paige said. She's right, Scott said quickly. The dishwasher might have failed no matter what we put in it. Also true. They both seemed surprised. I opened the cabinet farther and shone my phone light along the base. The particle board beneath the sink had swollen at the front edge. A gray line ran up the drywall. This has been leaking for days, I said. Paige's face went guarded. Show me the picture you sent. She scrolled again, then held out the phone. The image showed a broken wine glass in the dishwasher rack. At the bottom edge, barely visible, was a dark crescent of water on the floor. The date at the top was 9 days earlier. Below it, she had written, "Machine sounds awful and there's some water here." Scott had responded with a thumbs up. I handed the phone back. "I thought that meant I saw it," he said. "It meant you acknowledged it," Paige replied. "In my world, those are usually connected. You send thumbs up to everything. That isn't my fault. It's literally your thumb." "Stop," Mom said. They did. I took several photographs, then called a 24-hour water mitigation company. The man who answered said someone could arrive within 90 minutes. Scott frowned. "At this hour? They're going to charge double. The floor has been wet for 9 days. We're beyond saving money. I can pull the dishwasher out." "No, I know how." "So do I. Neither of us knows how far the water went." He crossed his arms. "You always assume hiring someone makes it official. I assume moisture inside a wall requires equipment you don't own. I can rent equipment." "Not from my house." The words came out flat. Mom looked up sharply. "His house, too." "No." Her mouth opened. I crouched to collect the soaked towels. My shoulder protested. I ignored it until Paige took the pile from my hands. "I'll do that," she said. "Put them in the bathtub. Don't run the washing machine until we know whether the lines are involved." She nodded and carried them away. For the next hour, nobody argued. Scott helped me slide furniture from the wet area. Mom made coffee no one wanted. Paige removed catering supplies from the garage counters with frantic efficiency, as though the mitigation crew might grade her. When their truck arrived, the technician pulled up sections of flooring and found water beneath 5 rows of planks. The dishwasher line had been leaking slowly near the inlet, then worsened when debris clogged the drain. He couldn't say the catering use caused the failure, only that repeated heavy cycles and food debris would not have helped. That answer satisfied no one. They set up 2 industrial fans and a dehumidifier. The kitchen immediately sounded like an airport runway. Mom stood in the living room in her robe, watching strangers cut away the bottom of a cabinet. "I love that floor," she said. "I know. You chose it. We'll choose another." "We?" The question was quiet. "Yes, Mom. We." She nodded but didn't look reassured. At 2 in the morning, after the crew left, I walked into the garage apartment to check that no outlets near the wet wall were affected. The space was bigger than I'd realized. Scott had done beautiful work. The walls were pale gray, the floor warm-toned laminate, and the tiny bathroom had a tile shower with a recessed shelf. Their bed was neatly made. Paige's creams and bottles stood in a perfect row on the dresser. The other half was no longer living space. Folding tables held thermal bags, packaging, stacks of printed menus, and a label printer. A whiteboard listed upcoming events by date, guest count, deposit, and balance due. 12 events were scheduled in the next 6 weeks. At the top, Paige had written, "Kitchen funding pending family approval." Below that was Bellwether Lane's address. I pointed. "What does that mean?" Scott stood in the doorway. "It's our operating address. Since when? We needed a consistent business address. The rental kitchen doesn't allow mail. You have it registered here?" "It's an address, Lena. You didn't ask. We live here. You live in a residential property I own." He rubbed both hands over his face. Exhaustion made him look older. "Can we not do this at 2 in the morning? When would you prefer? Before or after the business delivery trucks arrive?" "There are no delivery trucks." "Then what delivers all that? We pick up most orders." "Most?" Paige appeared behind him with her arms folded over her black catering shirt. "The supplier comes once a week," she said. "A small van. It doesn't bother anyone." I looked at the whiteboard again. "Does your lender think you operate here?" Neither answered. That folder wasn't just an idea, was it? Scott's jaw moved. Paige said, "We had preliminary conversations, using the house as proposed collateral. After transfer," she said, "not without your signature. That's not what I asked. We had to show the business had a stable base of operations, and you listed a property you do not own." "We listed our address," Scott snapped. "We didn't forge a deed. We didn't take money against it. We told them the ownership would change if the family agreed. The family didn't know there was anything to agree to. We were building a proposal. No, you were building expectations and planning to hand me the bill. His face flushed. Everything with you is a betrayal. Everything with you is temporary until someone else pays for it. The sentence hit. Scott stepped back as if I'd shoved him. Mom stood at the far end of the hall. I hadn't heard her approach over the fans. That was cruel, she said. Yes, I didn't take it back. Scott walked past her into the living room. Paige followed, but Mom stayed. You think he's a failure? She said. I think he makes promises before he knows who will carry them. He's trying. So am I. To do what? The question hurt more than it should have. Keep your home safe. By telling us it's yours every chance you get? It is mine every hour, whether I say it or not. Mom pressed her lips together. I left at 3. My apartment was silent except for the refrigerator cycling on and off. I sat on the floor beside the fern because I was too tired to take off my shoes. At 7, I called Sandra. I'm not coming in. Good, she said. I frowned. You don't know why. You never call. You arrive early and glare at people who describe something as close enough. If you're calling, don't come in. I'll be available by phone. No. Sandra. Lena. It was unsettling to hear my own tone used against me. Handle whatever it is, she said. We'll survive 8 hours. I wanted to argue. Instead, I thanked her and slept until noon. The damage estimate arrived 2 days later. The kitchen needed new flooring, part of a lower cabinet, drywall repair, and a dishwasher. Insurance would cover some of it after the deductible. The rest would come out of my savings. Scott offered to do the cabinet and flooring himself. I declined. He sent a message that read, of course. Paige sent nothing. I thought about the folder, the whiteboard, the supplier van, and 9 days of water spreading under a floor because no one wanted to deal with me. I thought about Mom's fall, which no one had told me about for the same stated reason. In that family, information had become a reward for being easy. I wrote down what had to change, not what I wanted people to feel, not what I wished they would understand. What had to change? I asked everyone to meet at Bellwether Lane after the mitigation crew removed the fans. Mom sat in her usual chair. Scott remained standing. Paige brought the blue folder but left it closed on the counter. I didn't sit. The business use of the house stops today, I said. No supplier deliveries, storage, prep, cleanup, or company address. Scott opened his mouth. I held up one hand. You'll have 90 days to find another place to live and move the company registration. Mom went white. You're evicting them. I'm giving them 3 months. They don't have anywhere to go. They sold a condo and put the proceeds into a business. That was their decision. We made that decision because we believed in ourselves, Paige said. I'm not punishing you for believing in yourselves. I'm refusing to let that belief occupy my house. Scott stared at me. You've wanted us out since the day you came home. I wanted my room. You got an apartment. Because my room was full. You said that solved it. It solved where I sleep. It did not give you permission to turn Bellwether Lane into collateral. Mom gripped the edge of the table. If they go, I go. The room fell still. You don't have to, I said. I'm not staying here after you throw your brother out. He is an adult with income and a wife with income, and he's my son. I know. Do you? I let the question sit between us. You have permanent use of this house, I said. I'll put that in writing. You pay the utilities like you always have. You can decorate, garden, host anyone you want. But no business use, no borrowing against it, and no one else moves in without us discussing it. Rules, Scott said. Limits. Same thing. No. Rules tell you how to live. Limits tell you what I will no longer carry. Mom stood. Then I'll leave with them. I nodded once because anything gentler would have broken in my mouth. That's your choice. She slapped the table with both palms. Stop saying that. The blue folder jumped. Paige caught it before it fell. Mom's eyes filled, but her voice stayed fierce. You make everything sound so simple. Choices, records, 90 days. People aren't boxes you can move until the room makes sense. No, I said. Boxes stay where I put them. I looked at all three of them. People keep deciding I'll move instead. No one answered. On my way out, I noticed the wooden gather sign beside the door had gone crooked. One screw had pulled halfway from the brick. I straightened it out of habit. Then I left it hanging there. The sign was gone the next time I came to Bellwether Lane. A clean rectangle marked the brick beside the front door, less faded than the wall around it. The loose screw lay on the windowsill. Scott took it down, Mom said when she saw me looking. He said he'd fix it. I picked up the screw and put it in my pocket. Inside, the kitchen floor had been stripped to bare subfloor. The lower cabinet doors were stacked against the dining room wall, and a sheet of plastic sealed the kitchen from the hall. The contractor had left 3 flooring samples on the table. I pushed them toward Mom. Pick one. She didn't touch them. It's your house, she said. I sat across from her. You live here. You have to look at the floor. I'll be gone before it matters. We both know you hate the gray one. Her eyes landed involuntarily on the middle sample, a streaky gray plank designed to make every room look like a dentist's office. I don't care. You made a face. I did not. You looked at it like it insulted Dad. That almost got her. One corner of her mouth moved before she caught it. I tapped the warm oak sample. This is closest to what was here. It's too yellow. Then the darker one. It'll show dust. Mom. She sighed and pulled the warm oak toward her. This one. I marked the back and put the others aside. For a few minutes, we discussed the repair without discussing anything else. The dishwasher model was no longer available. The cabinet company could match the doors, but not the exact stain. The contractor wanted access Thursday morning. I'll be here, Mom said. I can come. You have work. I can adjust. Scott can handle it. I looked at her. He still lives here, she added, for now. Her hand tightened around the flooring sample. Cardboard boxes lined the living room wall. Some were labeled kitchen, though the kitchen was under construction. Others said books, linens, and Dad, garage. You started packing. I told you I was leaving. I thought you were angry. I was. I am. Those aren't mutually exclusive. No. I learned that from you. I let that pass. Where are you going? Wherever Scott goes. Does Scott know that? Of course. That wasn't my question. She set the flooring sample down. He won't leave me. Again, the family equation. Scott stayed. Therefore, Scott loved. I left, therefore, whatever I gave from a distance had required less of me. I'm not leaving you either, I said. You're making me choose. I told you to stay. Without my son. He can visit. He can have dinner here. I'm asking him to live somewhere else and operate his business somewhere else. You know he can't afford both. Then the business isn't ready for dedicated space. You always have an answer. No, I have that answer. She stood and walked to the cabinet where she kept her medicines. A paper bag sat beside them with a receipt stapled to the top. I picked those up, she said. You don't have to reimburse me. I've been reimbursing your prescriptions. Only the ones the supplemental plan doesn't cover. I remembered the transfers she requested every few months. Pharmacy, tires, a plumber before Scott took over repairs. She rarely named exact amounts, and I rarely asked, because asking made her feel ashamed. I wasn't planning to stop, I said. You said you wouldn't carry us anymore. I said I wouldn't carry Scott's company. We're all connected, Lena. You can't cut one string and pretend the others don't move. She picked up the bag and put it in a drawer. For years, I had paid small expenses before they could become fears. Mom needed tires. I sent money. Her dental crown cost more than expected. I covered the difference. She never abused it. She always thanked me. Somehow those quiet payments had become another thing neither of us could mention without making it ugly. I'll keep covering your prescriptions, I said. No, Mom. No, I don't want you recording them. She left the room. The new floor went in the following week. Mom called to say it looked good, then added that Scott had noticed a gap near the pantry. There was no gap. He was looking at the expansion space beneath the trim. I explained that. She said, "You don't have to be defensive." I began to understand that defensive had become the family word for any answer they disliked. The business supplies disappeared from the garage apartment slowly. A stack of thermal bags vanished one day. The folding tables went the next. The supplier van came once after my deadline, and I sent Scott a message. The address can't be used for deliveries. He replied, it was already scheduled. I wrote, then it was the last one. He sent nothing back. Paige appeared at my apartment on a Sunday afternoon carrying the blue folder and no fern. I opened the door wider. Did Mom send you? No. Scott? Definitely not. She stepped inside and looked around. The metal certificate still sat beside Dad's photograph. Her eyes paused there, then moved away. I need to ask you something. If it involves the house, it involves time. I pointed to one of the folding chairs. I had bought a couch, but the chairs made serious conversations shorter. She sat and placed the folder on the table. We need another 45 days. You have 68 left. We need 45 after that. Why? To finish the booked events and build enough cash for a deposit on a commercial space. You're booked through when? Late fall. That's longer than 45 days. We can operate from a smaller rental kitchen. We just need storage and somewhere to live. Those are 3 separate needs. I know. Does Scott? Her eyes flashed. He isn't stupid. I didn't say he was. You imply it in a very organized way. I waited. She opened the folder. This section contained event schedules, vendor estimates, and several handwritten columns. The polished presentation was gone. Numbers crossed margins. Sticky notes covered older sticky notes. I'm showing you this because you asked for the books, she said. These aren't books. They're what I have. I read the first page. Mercer Table had 12 events scheduled, then 8 more over the following 2 months. Deposits had been collected on all of them. Projected final payments looked healthy until I followed the expense columns. Where is the deposit money? In the business. What does that mean? Ingredients, equipment, rental fees, payroll, for events already completed? Some. I turned another page. You're using new deposits to close old events. That's how cash flow works. No, cash flow means timing revenue and expenses. This means the money attached to October's food paid for August's food. We were scaling. You were short. She looked toward the window. How short? We expected the refinance. The refinance I had never agreed to. Scott was sure you would when you saw the plan. Were you? Paige worried the edge of a sticky note with one polished thumbnail. I thought your mother would convince you. The honesty landed without defense. I sat across from her. Does Mom know? She knows the company needs money. Does she know you accepted deposits you can't currently fulfill? We can fulfill them. How? That's why I'm asking for more time. Time doesn't buy ingredients. It lets us avoid rent. So Bellwether Lane keeps subsidizing the company. We pay for our own utilities, your residential utilities, not business storage, cleanup, deliveries, or risk. Her face tightened. You already said no. You don't have to enjoy it. I don't. It looks like you do. I closed the folder. No extension. She stood immediately. Then why did you make me show you everything? I didn't. You came here because I thought if you understood, I do understand. That's why the answer is no. She grabbed the folder and several pages slipped onto the floor. I bent to pick them up. My shoulder pulled sharply and I stopped. Paige saw. Without a word, she crouched and gathered the pages. Sit down, I said. She remained on the floor, holding the scattered schedule. You have events you can save, I continued. Not all of them. Her expression shifted. Cancel the lowest margin jobs now, I said. Refund what remains of those deposits. Use the release dates to take smaller events with faster final payment. Sell equipment you don't need in the next 60 days. Negotiate staged payments with your main supplier instead of pretending every invoice will clear. And stop offering 5 entree choices when 2 would do. She stared at me. You've thought about this. I read the pages. That fast? Your menu options are destroying your purchasing efficiency. A reluctant, exhausted laugh escaped her. You sound personally offended. I am. Nobody needs salmon, short ribs, chicken, pasta, and a vegan tower at the same buffet. The tower photographs well. It probably tastes like architecture. She sat in the other chair. For the next hour, we went through the event list. I did not offer money, the house, or a guarantee. I marked jobs that could be handled with their current equipment and circled expenses that could be delayed. Paige knew every menu, every client preference, and every vendor weakness. She was better at the business than I had given her credit for. She was also terrified. Near the bottom of one page, I found a recurring line marked Legacy Obligation. What's this? Old balance. To whom? Scott handles it. How much is left? I don't know. You just showed me every grocery invoice down to parsley. He said it was nearly resolved. I looked at her. She looked back. Something uneasy passed between us. When she left, she took my notes. Scott called 20 minutes later. What the hell did you say to Paige? She came to me. You told her to cancel the Harmon event. I told her it loses money. It leads to referrals. You can't cater referrals. You went through my business behind my back. She brought me the numbers. Because you scared her. No, your numbers scared her. His breathing filled the line. You love this, he said. You finally get to prove I can't do anything without you. If I wanted to prove that, I would have given her money. He went quiet. I didn't, I said. I know. The anger in his voice had changed. Beneath it was something worse. Fear. That evening, Mom sent a photograph of the repaired kitchen. The warm oak floor glowed under the lights. On the table sat one sealed box labeled Dad, Photos. Her message said, Scott found a place we can afford. I called immediately. She didn't answer. A second message appeared. It's above a friend's garage. Only temporary. I stared at the word temporary until the screen went dark. I drove to Bellwether Lane after work with the occupancy agreement in my bag. It was 4 pages, written in ordinary language. Mom could remain in the house for the rest of her life. She would pay utilities and routine household expenses. I would cover taxes, insurance, and owner-level repairs. She could have visitors, decorate, garden, and use every room. The property could not be used for business, pledged for debt, or given to anyone else. A lawyer had reviewed it, but it didn't read like a weapon. Mom treated it like one. She stood at the dining table surrounded by boxes and turned each page without reading more than the headings. You had this drawn up already? I told you I would put your security in writing after you gave Scott a deadline. The two things aren't connected. They're connected to me. She slid the pages back. I'm not signing. Take time. I don't need time. Read it first. I don't want a lifetime permission slip from my own daughter. It isn't permission. It prevents me from ever making you leave. You already made me leave. I did not. She turned away and wrapped a ceramic mixing bowl in newspaper. It had yellow flowers around the rim and a hairline crack from the year Scott tried to make bread with a hand mixer. You chose to go with him, I said, because you chose not to let him stay. Mom, if Scott had asked to live here while he found an apartment, this would be different. He built part of a company into the house without telling me, planned financing around equity he didn't own, and let water sit under the kitchen floor for 9 days. He didn't let it sit. He misunderstood Paige. He didn't want to hear her. You don't know what he wanted, neither do you. You just keep choosing the explanation that hurts least. She pressed too hard on the newspaper. It tore beneath her fingers. And you keep choosing the explanation that makes you right. I took another sheet and began wrapping the matching bowl. I'm not trying to be right. What are you trying to be? Done carrying the consequence of decisions I didn't make. She looked at me across the table. For 1 second, I thought she might understand. Then she said, That sounds like something you practiced. I don't practice conversations with you. You should. Maybe they'd be kinder. I put the bowl into the box. The apartment Scott had found belonged to his friend Dave Harmon, whose name I recognized from the event Paige had wanted to cancel. Dave owned a large detached garage behind his house and had converted the upper floor into an apartment for his father. His father had moved to Florida. The apartment had 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, and a main room with a kitchenette built along one wall. Scott described it as a loft. Paige called it what it was. "It's a room over a garage," she said when I found her packing clothes. She folded a sweater and placed it into a suitcase with unnecessary force. "How temporary?" I asked. "Month to month." "Does Dave know Mom is coming too?" "Yes." "Does he know the business needs storage?" Her hand stopped. "We're not storing business equipment there. Where is it going?" "Some to the rental kitchen. Some to a storage unit. That's another monthly cost. I can count, Lena." "I know." She zipped the suitcase. "Do you?" "Do I what?" "Know I can do anything besides arrange your brother's bad ideas into attractive folders." The bitterness surprised me. "I've never thought that. You thought the entire company was his. He talks like it is. So do you." I sat on the edge of the bed. "The event plan you showed me had your work all over it. Your notes helped. I'm glad. We canceled Harmon." I stared at her. "Dave Harmon? The man whose apartment you're moving into?" He appreciated the honesty. He said he'd rather lose the deposit than watch Scott go under trying to impress him. That's a useful friend. He also cut the rent because Scott is going to help rebuild the lower garage doors. There it was again. Scott turning labor into a bridge where money had failed. "That could work," I said. "Try not to sound devastated. I want things to work for you. You just don't want them to work in your house." "Correct?" She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. Move-out day arrived with cold rain. I rented a box truck before Scott could borrow one from a catering supplier and create another obligation. He objected until I told him the truck was my contribution to a clean exit, after which he objected to the phrase clean exit. Mom packed her own dishes. She had always distrusted other people with ceramic objects, including inexpensive mugs and one truly ugly gravy boat shaped like a duck. I sat beside her at the table, wrapping plates while she packed them vertically. "Horizontal stacks crack under vibration," I said. "I know how to pack dishes." "Then why are you laying the saucers flat? They're saucers. Still ceramic." She gave me a look and turned them upright. We worked through 2 cabinets without speaking. Newspaper ink darkened our fingers. Every few minutes, Scott crossed behind us carrying furniture. Paige labeled boxes by destination: apartment, storage, kitchen rental. She had abandoned decorative fonts. Mom wrapped the blue coffee pot last. "You can leave that," I said. "I'll buy another. It was mine before this house." "I know. I meant you don't have to pack it today. I want coffee tomorrow. I'm familiar with the urgency." She smiled despite herself, then immediately focused on the newspaper. I wrapped the pot. "Mom." "What?" "The agreement stays open." I said no. "You can change your mind." "So can you." "About Scott?" "About all of it." I tucked paper around the lid. "No." She nodded as though I had answered a different question. The truck filled faster than expected. Scott's tools alone occupied most of one wall. He had kept Dad's old socket set, the red metal case dented at one corner. Dad used to accuse both of us of losing the 10mm socket. After he died, we found 3 of them in his coat pocket. Scott caught me looking. "I'm taking it," I assumed. "You have his picture. I'm not dividing Dad. You divide everything else." I turned away before the sentence found a target. At the apartment over Dave's garage, the stairs were narrow and slick. The main room smelled faintly of sawdust and old coffee. A brown sleeper sofa faced a television mounted too high on the wall. The kitchenette had 2 burners, a small sink, and a refrigerator beneath the counter. Mom walked in carrying the fern from my apartment. I had brought it because she insisted it belonged to her. The plant had developed 2 more yellow leaves, which felt editorial. "This is nice," she said. Paige looked at the single bedroom. "We'll put the pull-out here for Mom," Scott said. "No," Paige said. Everyone stopped. She lowered her voice. "Diane should have the bedroom." "I'm not taking your bedroom," Mom said. "The bathroom is through it." Paige replied. You'd have to walk through while we're sleeping anyway. I wake early. So do caterers. Scott set down a box. We already discussed this. You discussed it with me, Paige said. Not with her. Mom moved toward the bedroom. I'll sleep on the sofa. Mom, I said. She turned. Don't. One word. No raised voice. I let it go. We unloaded until the apartment was packed tight. The labeled boxes formed narrow aisles through the main room. Scott's tool chests remained downstairs because the floor might not hold them. Business equipment went directly to the storage unit, except for several thermal bags Paige said they needed the next morning. At 5, Dave brought pizza and beer. He was 46, with a beard turning gray and the broad, scarred hands of someone who worked with wood for a living. He hugged Scott, shook my hand, and called Mom ma'am until she told him to stop. I put a new lock on the outside door, he said. Only you 3 have keys. 4 people looked at me. I'm not moving in, I said. Dave blinked. Didn't think you were. He's clarifying inventory, Scott muttered. After pizza, Mom stood at the sink washing paper plates until Paige gently removed them from her hands and pointed out that they were disposable. I know, Mom said. I was rinsing the sauce off before the trash. Dave looked at me with a question in his eyes. I had no answer he needed. When it was time to leave, I asked for the Bellwether Lane keys. Paige handed hers over immediately. It had a small silver P charm attached. Mom dug through her purse and placed the brass key marked by a faint band where the masking tape had been. You can keep it, I said. I don't live there. You still can. No. She set it in my palm and folded my fingers around it. Scott patted his pockets. I don't have mine. You used it this morning. I must have packed it. Find it. I will. Tonight. His eyes hardened. I said I will. Mom stood between us, so I left without waiting. Back at Bellwether Lane, the house felt larger and cheaper at the same time. Pale rectangles marked where furniture had stood. The bedroom Paige and Scott had used contained 4 wire hangers and a single black sock. Mom's room was empty except for a tissue beneath the radiator. In the kitchen, the warm oak floor looked untouched. The gather sign lay on the counter beside the loose screw. Scott had sanded the damaged corner and filled the hole where the hanger had split. He had done exactly what he promised. He simply hadn't put it back. I carried it to the basement. My bookcase still stood in the living room. The photographs were gone from the towel near the furnace. Mom had packed them in the box labeled Dad, photos, all except one. It lay face down behind the water heater. I reached carefully and pulled it free. Dad stood beside me at my first promotion, grinning. A crack ran across the glass from his shoulder to the edge of my uniform. I sat on the basement step with the photograph in my lap and listened to the empty house settle around me. My phone buzzed. Mom, we're all set. Don't worry. Then another message. Scott can't find the key. He'll look tomorrow. I turned the phone face down. On the floor beside me, a dark square showed where the photographs had protected the concrete from dust. For years, I had thought coming home meant returning to the place where people kept space for you. I was beginning to understand that sometimes home was the place left behind after everyone took what they believed was theirs. I took the photograph to a frame shop near the hospital. The owner replaced the glass while preserving the dented wooden frame because, as she put it, new doesn't always mean repaired. I carried it back to my apartment instead of Bellwether Lane. The empty house needed attention, but I wasn't ready to sleep there. I checked it twice a week, collected mail, adjusted the thermostat, and opened faucets so the traps wouldn't dry out. The refrigerator hummed in the kitchen with nothing inside except mustard, baking soda, and a jar of pickles Mom had forgotten. Scott's key never appeared. Every few days, I asked. Every few days, he said he was still looking. Mom claimed the apartment over Dave's garage was comfortable. When I called, I could hear the truth behind her voice. Cabinets closing while she spoke, Paige asking where something had been moved, Scott conducting business calls 6 feet away. Dave put a chairlift in for his father, Mom said. So the stairs aren't a problem. Do you use it? No. It's slow. Then the stairs are a problem. They're exercise. Those are not the same thing. I'm fine, Lena. Fine was a family dialect. Depending on tone, it could mean healthy, furious, trapped, or please stop asking. Marcy visited and gave me a report without admitting it was a report. The apartment is clean, she said. The sofa is terrible. Diane insists it's good for her back, which means she can't stand up after lying on it. She could come home. She knows. Did you tell her? I enjoy having all my fingers, so not in those words. The first real crack in Mercer Table came through a phone call from Paige. I was reviewing supply rotation plans when my cell buzzed 4 times in a row. I stepped into an empty office. What happened? Do you remember the legacy obligation? Her voice was too controlled. Yes. Scott says you know about it. I know he had debt after the first restaurant. I paid the equipment balance your mother-in-law guaranteed. How much? I told her. She inhaled slowly. He said his sister covered all the old debt. I covered that one balance. He told me he handled the rest. He didn't. I waited. The produce supplier for tomorrow's event won't release the order, she said. They bought the accounts from Scott's old supplier 2 years ago. Apparently, the old balance transferred with it. How much? $14,000. That isn't the amount on your current books. No, it isn't. Where is Scott? Sitting in the van. Does he know you called me? He told me not to. Then why did you? Because every answer I get from him has another answer hidden inside it. I leaned against the desk. What do you need from me? The truth. About what? The condo money. I don't know anything about your condo money. He said he told you we used some of it to clean up old debt. He told me you put most of it into the business. That's all? She made a sound between a laugh and a sob. I did put most of it into the business. I transferred it into the business account. He moved $31,000 out during the first month. Did you ask him? He called it startup reconciliation. I thought he meant equipment he'd bought before closing. What did he say now? That he didn't want to begin our company with his old failures hanging over us. So he paid old creditors. Some. Not all, obviously. Did he tell you before he moved the money? No. There was no useful way to soften that. What event is tomorrow? I asked. A medical association dinner. 160 people. Have they paid the final balance? Half. The rest is due after service. Can you source a reduced menu elsewhere? We can't afford the original menu elsewhere. Can you afford to refund them? No. Then call the client before they call you. I know. Paige. What? Knowing is not the same as doing. She went silent. I heard the van door close in the background. Scott's muffled voice asked who she was talking to. I have to go, she said. The call ended. That evening, Scott came to my apartment. He pounded 3 times. When I opened the door, he walked past me without waiting. You're done talking to my wife about my business. She called me. You should have hung up. She asked me a factual question. You love factual questions. I told her what I paid after the restaurant closed. That was none of her business. You made it her business when you used her money. His face was gray with exhaustion. His catering shirt had a streak of something red near the hem. My money too, he said. Your shared money. You don't understand marriage. No. I understand shared accounts. You think because you've got a pension and a little apartment and all your labeled boxes, you understand everybody's decisions. I don't understand why you didn't tell her. I was going to replace it. With the house refinance. With growth. Funded by the house refinance. He paced to the window and back. I had a plan. You had a sequence in which nobody said no. I knew you'd say no if I asked too early. That was as close as Scott came to admitting what he had done. So you let Paige believe I was the only obstacle, I said. She already thought that. You helped. He looked at the medal certificate on the shelf, then at Dad's photograph. Dad would hate what you're doing. You don't get to bring him in because Mom didn't work. His eyes snapped toward me. The silence after that sentence felt dangerous. Then he laughed. It was small and bitter. There she is. Who? The commander. I never commanded you. You sure tried. He left, slamming the door hard enough to shake the fern-shaped shadow Mom's plant had left on the wall. The Medical Association dinner was canceled 14 hours before service. Paige called the client herself. She offered the food they could source, explained the limitation without blaming a supplier, and returned what remained of the deposit. The association found a hotel that could provide a basic buffet. Mercer Table lost the final payment and the referrals Scott had counted before earning them. 2 other clients canceled after hearing there was a problem. A third demanded its deposit back. Scott sold the commercial oven they had purchased for the basement kitchen that never existed. Then the storage racks, label printer, and half the thermal bags went. I knew because Paige sent me a list, not for permission, for accountability. At the bottom, she wrote, "I should have done this 6 weeks ago." I replied, "Probably." She sent back, "You could try kindness once." I wrote, "You're doing the hard part now." 3 dots hovered for a long time. "Thank you," she finally replied. Mom blamed the 90-day deadline. If they'd had more time, they could have recovered, she said during our next call. More time in Bellwether Lane would not have erased old debt. It would have saved rent. They were already behind before they paid rent. "You don't know that. I've seen the numbers." She went quiet. "Paige showed you?" "Yes." "Behind Scott's back?" "Yes." That was wrong. So was taking $31,000 without telling her. She's his wife. It was their money. Exactly. Mom changed the subject to her prescriptions. "I found a discount card," she said. "It's actually cheaper than my supplemental coverage for one of them." "Good. I don't need you paying. You made that clear. I don't want money between us. Money has always been between us. We just used to pretend it was air. Why do you have to say things like that?" "Because when I don't say them, someone spends the air." She hung up. I sat on my folding chair for nearly an hour afterward, though the couch was 3 feet away. Paige left Scott 11 days later. She came to Bellwether Lane while I was checking the mail. Her car was packed, clothes hanging across the back window. For one wild second, I thought Mom had changed her mind. Then Paige got out alone. "I start Monday," she said. "Where?" "A hotel 2 hours west. Banquet operations manager. That suits you. It has a salary, benefits. People above me who can stop me from spending money we don't have. You'll hate that for at least a month. I'm looking forward to it." She wore no makeup. I could see faint shadows beneath her eyes. "Does Scott know?" "I told him this morning." "How did he take it?" "He said you did this." "I didn't apply for the job. He thinks you turned me against him." "Did I?" "No." The answer came quickly. She looked at the house. "I helped him believe it was ours," she said. "Not legally. I'm not an idiot. I never said you were." "No, but you enjoyed watching me discover that legal ownership was the least of our problems. That part I might have enjoyed for 5 minutes." She laughed, then covered her face. I waited. When she lowered her hands, her eyes were wet. "I worked without paying myself for 8 months. I thought that was sacrifice. He knew part of my work was paying for mistakes he'd told me were over. I'm sorry. He isn't a bad man." "I know. That almost makes it worse." "I know that too." She opened her purse and took out the Bellwether Lane key with the silver P charm. "You already gave me this." "I know." She turned it over in her fingers. "Scott made 2 copies when we moved in. He said one was in case I lost mine." My stomach tightened. "Where's the other copy?" "He kept it. He told me he couldn't find his key. He had his original the day we moved. I saw him use it, so he has at least one." "At least?" She placed the key in my hand. "Change the locks. Mom may come back. Then give your mother a new key." I closed my fingers around the silver charm. "Where are you staying?" "The hotel gives me a room for the first month." "And after?" "I'll figure it out." She glanced at my shoulder. "You should stop picking up boxes. You should stop arranging other people's bad ideas into attractive folders. Deal." She hugged me before I could prepare for it. Her cheek was cold from the wind. Then she got into her car and drove away. I did not change the locks. Maybe that was foolish. Maybe I wanted Scott to return the key because returning it would mean he understood something a locksmith couldn't force. That night, Mom called from the apartment over Dave's garage. How could you encourage her to leave him? I didn't. She came to you after she decided. You could have told her marriage requires endurance. So does bad judgment. That doesn't make either one sacred. He is falling apart. I know, and you're sitting in that house alone. I'm at my apartment. That's even worse. Behind her, I heard Scott speaking to someone. His voice had the polished urgency he used with vendors. Mom lowered her own voice. He needs family right now. He has you. He needs his sister. What does that mean? You know what it means. No. Say it. She didn't. I heard Scott clearly then. My sister pulled the property at the last second, he was saying. Left us without our operating base. I just need a little flexibility on the balance. Mom went silent. So did I. Scott continued telling the supplier a version of the story in which Bellwether Lane had nearly belonged to him, the financing had nearly been certain, and I had withdrawn something already promised. Mom said my name softly. You heard him, I said. He's embarrassed. He's lying. He's trying to keep his business alive. The business is closed. He has a few private jobs. With what equipment? She didn't answer. Scott's voice came closer. Mom, who are you talking to? The line disconnected. I called back. No one answered. I called a third time and got voicemail. Then Mom sent a message. I need to think. I typed, about what? The answer never came. At work the next morning, I put 6 boxes of isolation gowns on the wrong inventory line. Andre caught it before anything moved. He tapped the screen. You're about to send these to cardiac imaging. They might appreciate the surprise. You okay? Yes. He waited. No, I said, but the gowns are. He corrected the line while I stood beside him, angry at myself for needing the help and grateful he hadn't made the help feel large. Sandra appeared at the end of the aisle. My office, she said. I made one entry error. If I fired people for one entry error, I'd be stocking this warehouse alone. In her office, she closed the door and pointed to the chair. I remained standing. That wasn't a tactical suggestion, she said. I sat. She slid a mug toward me. The coffee smelled burned enough to remove paint. Family? She asked. My mother heard my brother lie about me. Did you know he was lying? Yes. Did she? She does now. Sandra took a sip and grimaced at her own coffee. That can be worse. I thought the truth was supposed to help. Truth is a tool. Hammers help too. Depends what's underneath. I looked at the warehouse through the glass wall. I don't want to be the person who needs everyone to admit I was right. Then don't be. That's it? You want a 12-step program? I'd settle for a flowchart. She leaned back. Do you want your mother to understand you, or do you want her to suffer the correct amount before she does? The question irritated me because I understood it immediately. I don't know. Good. People who answer too fast are usually lying. She sent me home at 3. Mom still had not called. I drove past Dave's house once, which was both pointless and beneath me. The garage apartment lights were on. Through the upper window, I saw someone cross the room carrying a laundry basket. I kept driving. Marcy called that evening. Diane is here. At your house? She arrived with the fern and no coat. Why does everyone transport that plant during emotional emergencies? It has become a service animal. I sat up on the couch. Is she all right? She's angry. At me. Currently at the fern. Apparently it's dropping leaves to manipulate her. Is she coming home? I didn't ask. Why not? Because she'd say no before she knew the answer. I rubbed my shoulder. Marcy lowered her voice. She confronted Scott after your call. What happened? He told her the lender knew the house transfer was uncertain. That's not what I asked. I'm getting there. She asked why he told the supplier you pulled the property. He said it was easier than explaining family complications. Family complications. He also said if you had supported him, Paige wouldn't have left. I closed my eyes. And your mother, Marcy continued, Asked whether Paige knew about the old debt before she put the condo money into the company. What did he say? He said marriage isn't an audit. That sounds like him. Diane said no. It sounded like you. That opened my eyes. She said that? She did. Then she started crying because apparently insulting you has become a transferable family skill. I heard Mom in the background telling Marcy she was not crying. She wants to talk to you, Marcy said. Put her on. I didn't say tonight. Marcy. She's sleeping here. I gave her the guest room and 2 antihistamines because the fern has mildew. I can come get her. No, let her decide what she's asking before you answer. The next morning, Mom called at 6:12. I was awake. She didn't say hello. Does the offer still stand? Yes. You don't even know which offer. The house? Silence. Yes, I said again. It still stands. I can pay more than utilities. We'll discuss it. I don't want you telling everyone I'm living there for free. I have never told anyone that. You told everybody at the dinner. I said I paid the mortgage. That's the same thing. No, but we can argue about vocabulary after you come home. She made a small sound. Are you at Marcy's? I asked. Yes. I'll pick you up. My things are at Scott's. We'll get them. I don't want a scene. Then we won't create one. You make that sound like it's entirely controllable. It's more controllable than weather. Not in this family. I picked her up 40 minutes later. Marcy stood in her driveway wearing a bathrobe and holding the fern at arm's length. It's diseased, she announced. It's dramatic, Mom said. Same result, take it. I put the plant in the back seat. Mom carried 1 canvas bag. She had slept in her clothes. Her silver hair was flattened and purple shadows sat beneath her eyes. Once we were on the road, she said, I stayed 6 weeks. You did. I tried, I know. You think it was foolish. I think the sofa was terrible. It was. She looked out the window. Scott offered me the bedroom. I know. I said no, I know that too. Paige was right. Having the bathroom through their room was ridiculous. I kept my eyes on the road. He took some shifts with another caterer, she said. He's not doing nothing. I never said he was. He says you think he's lazy. I think he's willing to work extremely hard after avoiding the easier truth. That sounds like your father. It did. At Dave's, the lower garage doors stood open. Scott was inside sanding a section of wood trim. He wore safety glasses and an old sweatshirt dusted white. He switched off the sander when we approached. What are you doing here? He asked me, helping Mom move. His gaze went to her. So that's it? Mom held her canvas bag against her stomach. I need my own room. I said, you could have ours. I don't mean the bedroom. His face tightened. You're going back to her house. Yes, under her agreement, I'm going to read it. He looked at me. Congratulations. Don't, Mom said. He pulled off the safety glasses. What? Make her the reason. She is the reason. No, she's the reason you had to stop using Bellwether Lane. She is not the reason Paige left. She is not the reason the supplier won't release food. And she never promised you the house. Scott stared at her. Mom's voice shook, but she kept going. I let you think I could convince her. That part is mine. You said it should be your house. I believe that. You still do. Mom looked toward me. No, I believed living there made it mine because I needed that to be true. It wasn't. Scott laughed, but it broke in the middle. She got to you. She heard you, I said. He stepped closer. You were listening to a private call. You were 3 feet from the phone. I was trying to keep a supplier from burying me by telling him I withdrew property you never had. It was 1 sentence. It's the same sentence you've been telling everyone. I left. You stayed. Therefore, anything I earned belongs to the people who remain geographically convenient. I didn't say that. You built a refinancing plan out of it. Mom moved between us. Stop. We did. She looked at Scott. I'm going home. He swallowed. Fine, he said. It was the family dialect again. We packed her belongings into my SUV. 6 weeks in the apartment had compressed her life into boxes stacked against walls. Her clothes smelled faintly of sawdust. The blue coffee pot sat beside the kitchenette sink. I wrapped it in a towel. Scott carried boxes down without speaking. When we finished, I asked for the Bellwether Lane key. He shoved both hands into his sweatshirt pockets. I told you I lost it. Paige told me you made copies. His eyes flicked toward Mom. She gave me hers. I don't know where the other one is. You had your original on move-out day. Then it's in storage. Find it. He turned away. Mom touched my arm. Not today. That's what everyone said last time. Lena. I let him walk back into the garage. At Bellwether Lane, Mom paused inside the front door. The house smelled closed up, not abandoned exactly, but stale with stillness. I had left the heat low. Sunlight fell across the warm oak floor and the empty space where the kitchen table had been. Mom stepped onto the floor and looked down. There's no gap, she said. No, I told Scott that, I assumed. She walked through each room as if checking whether the house resented her. In her bedroom, the curtain rods cast thin shadows on bare walls. I left the bed, she said. We'll get another. I shouldn't have given it away. You thought you were moving. I was punishing you. The directness stopped me. She sat on the windowsill. I knew that sofa would be miserable, she said. I knew before we loaded the truck. I wanted you to see me choose him. I saw. I wanted it to hurt. It did. She nodded. No broad apology came. For once, she didn't ask whether I understood why she had done it. We brought in the boxes. I made up the guest bed with sheets from the linen closet because her room would remain empty until we bought furniture. Mom protested twice, then lay down fully dressed and fell asleep before I finished unpacking the coffee pot. I placed the occupancy agreement on the kitchen counter. She read it the following morning. Every page. She called me at work with 3 questions. Can Scott stay overnight? He can visit and stay overnight. He can't move in. Can I paint? Yes. Can I leave before I die? I leaned back in my chair. Yes, Mom. It isn't a sentence. And you can't make me leave? No, even if we fight? Even then. She signed it that afternoon. I gave her a new copy of the front door key, not Paige's key with the silver charm, a plain brass one I had made on my lunch break. Mom turned it over in her hand. What happened to the one that said Mom? I removed the tape. No, the one I gave back. It's in my apartment. She slipped the new key onto her ring. You should move here, she said. I'm not ready. Because of me? Partly. She absorbed that without flinching. All right, she said. That evening we bought a bed. Mom chose one too firm, lay on it in the showroom, and changed her mind after 30 seconds. We argued about delivery fees. She won by finding a coupon in her purse that had expired 9 months earlier and persuading the salesman to honor it anyway. On the drive back, she said, At the dinner, I knew what I said wasn't fair. I kept my eyes on the road. I said your service was a job because Scott needed me to make what he did bigger. I heard you. I made what you did smaller instead. Yes. She folded the expired coupon into a tiny square. I'm sorry for that sentence, she said. It wasn't everything. It was specific. For the first time, it was enough to begin. We drove the rest of the way without speaking. The apology sat between us like something breakable neither of us wanted to handle in a moving car. Mom paid the next water bill 3 days early. She left the receipt on the kitchen counter under a salt shaker, then called to make sure I had seen it. I saw it. I want a record. You can keep your own records. I thought that was your department. It can be hereditary. She laughed, but there was caution behind it. We were relearning which jokes could hold weight. Her new bed arrived Friday. I met the delivery truck at Bellwether Lane and found Mom sweeping an already clean bedroom. She had bought pale blue curtains and a small wooden nightstand from a thrift store. You don't have to hover, she told me while the delivery men assembled the frame. I'm not hovering. You've checked the screws twice. One was loose. The man was still tightening it. That explains why it's no longer loose. After they left, we made the bed together. Mom tucked the top sheet beneath the mattress with precise hospital corners that would have passed inspection anywhere I'd served. Where did you learn that? I asked. You think the Army invented neat beds? I think you used to throw a quilt over mine and call it done. You kicked the sheets off every night. Maybe I was resisting oppressive domestic standards. You were 9. We stood on opposite sides of the bed, smiling. Then Mom smoothed the quilt and said, I should have kept your room. The smile left gently. You didn't know when I'd need it. I knew you were coming home. Apparently, that was open to interpretation. I let Paige use the closet first. Then she bought the treadmill. By then, it felt rude to tell her to move it, but not rude to tell me there wasn't space. She nodded. That was new, too. No explanation designed to cancel the effect. I'm sorry, she said. I pulled the quilt straight at one corner. Thank you. A week later, we unpacked the box marked Dad Photos. Mom sat on the living room floor and handed me frames one by one. Dad at the lake wearing a hat he claimed made him look outdoorsy, and Mom said made him look wanted for questioning. Dad and Scott in front of the first restaurant, both holding wooden spoons like weapons. Dad in a lawn chair asleep with a newspaper across his face. There were pictures of me too, basic training, my first promotion, a holiday dinner in a military dining facility where every person at the table looked exhausted and overly cheerful. Mom touched that one. That was the Christmas we missed your call. You were at Aunt Beverly's. Scott said the connection kept dropping. It did. We should have called back. You were opening gifts. She looked at me. You remember that? Yes. I thought you'd forgotten. I remember waiting in a hallway because it was the only place with enough signal. Someone had hung silver garland around a fire extinguisher. Mom held the frame by both edges. You said it was fine. I say that a lot. I know. She wiped the glass with her sleeve. I'm sorry we didn't call back. We hung the family photographs in the hallway. My military pictures went among the others, not in a shrine and not in a basement. Dad at the lake, Scott at the restaurant, me squinting beneath a sun too bright for the camera. The arrangement looked uneven. Mom said it looked lived in. My 6-month lease approached its end. Mr. Cho slipped the renewal notice under my door with a handwritten note saying he would hold the rent steady because I was quiet and did not own drums. I put the notice on my table and avoided it for 5 days. At work, Sandra found me studying apartment listings during lunch. You moving? Possibly. Where? I own a house. I've heard rumors. I don't want to take over Mom's space. Sandra leaned against the break room counter. How many bedrooms? 3, plus the converted garage. Your mother uses all of them? No. Then this isn't a space problem. I know. It's a permission problem. I own the house, not her permission. That annoyed me because it was accurate. That evening, I walked through the converted garage apartment for the first time since Scott and Paige left. The bed was gone. Dust outlined the folding tables that had held their business supplies. A few labels clung to the baseboard. The tiny bathroom still smelled faintly of Paige's lavender soap. The space had its own exterior door, the dark blue one I'd seen on the day I came home. A second door connected to the main hallway. There was enough room for a bed, a desk, my couch, and the bookcase still standing in Mom's living room. Mom appeared in the connecting doorway. You should use this. That's what I'm thinking. I won't come in. You can come in. I'll knock. You don't knock now. You don't live here now. I looked at the pale gray walls, the warm laminate, and the windows Scott had installed. He did good work. He usually does, Mom said, when the work has edges. I called Scott before making a decision. He answered on the 5th ring. Noise clanged behind him. I'm working. I can call later. What do you need? I'm thinking about moving into the garage apartment. Silence. Why are you telling me? You built it. In your house. Yes. So do whatever you want. I wanted you to hear it from me. What am I supposed to say? Thank you for taking the room you threw me out of? I didn't throw you out of that room. I ended business use and gave you 90 days to move. There's the wording. What wording would make you feel better? None, Lena. You won. I wasn't competing. Easy to say from the winner's house. Someone called his name in the background. I have to go, he said. Are you working for another catering company? Yes, that's good. He laughed once. You can't help yourself. What? Approving. The line went dead. I decided to move anyway. Not because Sandra was right, though she was. Not because the lease cost money, though it did. I moved because I was tired of treating my own desire for home like an application awaiting family review. I gave Mr. Cho notice. He said he was sorry to lose me, but pleased the table from his sister would remain in the state. Mom helped me paint the garage apartment a soft cream. I wanted white. She said white looked like surrender. To what? Color. We compromised. She rolled paint across one wall while I taped trim. The radio played songs from the 70s. Mom knew every word and sang each one half a beat late. During a commercial, she said, I called Scott. I kept pressing tape along the baseboard. How is he? Working nights with a caterer in town. Helping Dave during the day when there's work. That's a lot. He owes people. Yes. He asked if he could come back. My hand stopped. What did you say? I said I couldn't offer him the house. Did you want to? Yes. The answer was immediate. I wanted to say yes before he finished asking. Then I remembered the supplier call. I sat back on my heels. He said it would only be for a month, Mom continued. I told him he could visit, but he couldn't move in unless we both agreed. How did he take it? He said I sounded like you. Sorry. I told him that wasn't an insult. I looked at her. She rolled another strip of cream over the gray. He didn't like that, she said. Mom began paying for her own prescriptions, not to punish me and not to prove she had never needed help. She brought me the pharmacy receipt one afternoon and showed me the discount. I saved $32. You drove across town. It's 4 miles. You used $6 in gas. Still $26. You bought coffee. That's unrelated spending. You sound like Paige. Mom folded the receipt and placed it in her purse. I can manage. I know. The sentence came easier than I expected. She studied me. You never did. That isn't true. You managed for me before I could ask. That was the point. It meant I never had to find out whether I could do it myself. I wanted to defend the money, the years of payments, the relief I had heard in her voice. Instead, I said, I thought helping meant removing the problem. Sometimes it did. And sometimes it removed me. I understood what she meant, though I didn't fully agree. That was becoming possible between us too. Paige sent occasional messages from the hotel. The first was a photograph of a banquet room set for 300, every chair aligned, every napkin folded exactly the same way. No vegan towers, she wrote. I replied, growth. She sent back, don't ruin it. She and Scott were separated, not officially ending anything and not officially rebuilding. She had spoken to him twice. Both conversations turned into arguments about whether leaving had caused the business failure or merely acknowledged it. He still thinks Bellwether Lane was one signature away, she told me on the phone. He built the future around that. So did I. You stopped. After the floor warped, the company collapsed, and I moved cities. Timing is personal. She laughed. That should be on one of your mother's signs. Mom invited Scott to Sunday dinner after I moved the first load of boxes into the garage apartment. She asked me before calling him. It's your home, I said. That sounds like permission. It isn't. Then say what you mean. I took a breath. Yes, I'm comfortable having dinner with him. Better. Scott arrived carrying a grocery store pie and Dad's red socket set. I thought this should be here, he said, setting the metal case beside the hall closet. You use it, I said. Dave has tools. That never stopped Dad from owning 7 hammers. I only found 5. For a moment, we were brother and sister standing inside a shared memory. Then he noticed the boxes in the garage apartment. Moving day, next weekend. He nodded without looking at me. Got your room after all. Mom came from the kitchen carrying a serving bowl. Scott. What? She did. Yes, Mom said. After she bought the house, paid for it, left it open to all of us, came home to find her room occupied, and rented somewhere else so we wouldn't be inconvenienced. He stared at her. Mom's hands trembled around the bowl, but she did not look away. She didn't abandon us, she said. We made it easier to call her absent than to admit what she was doing from far away. The room went still. Scott set the pie on the counter. I came for dinner, he said. So did she, Mom answered. Dinner was awkward and ordinary. The chicken was overcooked. Scott fixed a loose hinge on the pantry door without announcing it. I served him the largest piece of pie, and he accepted it without making the gesture symbolic. When he left, he paused beside my half-unpacked bookcase. There are 2 boxes of catering equipment still in Dave's storage room, he said. Some of it might be Paige's. Ask her. I did. She doesn't want it. What are you doing with it? Selling what I can. Throwing out the rest. He shoved his hands into his jacket pockets. Can I bring it here next Saturday and sort it in the driveway? Dave needs the space. Why here? One of the boxes has Mom's kitchen things mixed in. I looked at Mom. She nodded. Saturday, I said. He opened the front door. 10, I added. I heard you. After he left, Mom picked up the grocery store pie box and folded the lid closed. You didn't ask about the key, she said. No? Why not? Because next Saturday is already going to be long. Outside, Scott's truck started, idled, then pulled away. I stood at the window until the taillights disappeared, wondering whether he would bring back more than boxes. Scott arrived at 9:52 with 2 boxes in the truck bed and a third wedged behind the passenger seat. You're early, I said. You said 10. That makes you early. It makes me not late. Those are different categories. He looked toward the house. Are we doing this? Mom opened the front door before I could answer. I made coffee, she called. And there are muffins. Scott closed his eyes briefly. She called me at 7 to ask what kind. You like blueberry. I know what I like. She was confirming. She asked if I'd developed an allergy. Have you? He gave me a flat look and lifted the first box from the truck. We sorted everything in the driveway. The catering equipment looked less impressive outside its context. 2 dented chafing dishes, stacks of menu holders, serving spoons, tongs, insulated pitchers, and a tabletop burner with 1 broken knob. 1 thermal bag still carried a gold Mercer table logo across the front. Scott placed the usable equipment on a folding table to photograph for sale. Trash went into black bags. Mom's kitchen things formed a small pile near the garage. The duck-shaped gravy boat, 3 mixing bowls, a bundt pan, and a set of measuring cups Paige had apparently taken by accident. Mom came outside and held up the gravy boat. I wondered where this went. I assumed you'd hidden it from yourself, I said. It was your grandmother's. That doesn't improve it. Scott looked between us. Are we really doing this again? You stay out of it, Mom said. You used to drink milk from this. I was 6. You were 15. He took the gravy boat from her and placed it carefully with the kitchen things. At the bottom of the second box was the blue folder. The clear cover had cracked near 1 corner. Bellwether Family Home Transition still showed through, my name small beneath it. Paige's estimates remained in plastic sleeves. The backyard drawing included a rectangle labeled Lena Studio, Phase 2. Scott picked it up. You want this? No, me neither. He started to toss it into a trash bag, then stopped. It was a good presentation. It was attractive. That isn't what I said. It was based on money you didn't have, property you didn't own, and consent you hadn't received. He dropped it into the bag. Still looked good, he said. Yes. That concession seemed to satisfy him more than it should have. Mom returned inside with her kitchen things. She didn't offer to help sort the rest. I suspected she understood that leaving us alone was the useful kind of absence. Scott photographed the tabletop burner. Dave wants this. Then why photograph it? He offered 50. I think I can get 70. You owe him discounted rent. That doesn't make 50 become 70. I almost smiled. He noticed. What? Nothing. You're making the face. What face? The one where you think I'm being Scott. You are Scott. You know what I mean. I did. He meant the version of himself our family treated as both charming and inevitable. The man who could spend an hour bargaining over $20 while planning to borrow thousands. "How's the catering job?" I asked. "Fine. Fine healthy or fine trapped?" He glanced at me. "I'm learning the dialect," I said. "Trapped mostly. The owner's an idiot. Does he pay you?" "Every Friday. Then learn from the idiot." Scott shook his head, but there was no heat in it. He had taken a full-time position supervising prep for another catering company. The pay was less than he'd expected to earn from Mercer Table, and more than Mercer Table had actually paid him. At night, he helped Dave with garage renovations to reduce the rent. The old supplier balances had been consolidated into payment plans, negotiated after Page refused to sign anything else. "I sent the first payment Tuesday," he said. "That's good. There. That. What?" "The approval." I said something was good. "Like I'm one of your employees. My employees aren't mine. You know what I mean." "I do, but you're making it difficult on purpose." He set down his phone. "You don't talk to me, you assess me. That isn't fair, isn't it?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. The driveway was wet from overnight rain. A brown leaf had adhered to the toe of his boot. I remembered those boots lined beneath the back bedroom window with Paige's treadmill in the middle of the room. "I'm glad you were with Mom when she fell," I said. Scott's expression shifted. "I should have known," I continued, "but I didn't. You put in the grab bars. You took her to urgent care. You helped her after Dad died in ways I couldn't from where I was." He looked toward the front window. "I called you from urgent care," he said. "No, you didn't. I took my phone out. I had your number up. But you didn't call. Mom told me not to worry you. You listened. I usually did." There was a larger sentence inside that one. "I am grateful you were here," I said. He crouched to coil an extension cord. "That doesn't make the house yours." The cord stopped moving. "You couldn't leave it alone." "No, because gratitude and ownership are different things. You keep trying to make one pay out as the other." He stood. "And you keep trying to act like the deed is the only thing that matters. It mattered when you wanted my signature. It's why you won." I looked at him. "You still think I won? You got the house. Mom came back. Paige calls you. I work for someone I don't respect and sleep over Dave's garage. I had the house before any of this. You know what I mean." "No, Scott, I don't. Explain how I won something I bought 6 years ago." He kicked the folded edge of a trash bag. "You had paperwork. You had every payment recorded. You had all the proof lined up before the rest of us even knew we were arguing. The deed didn't make you lie to Paige." His jaw tightened. "The mortgage records didn't make Mom dismiss my service," I continued. "And the insurance estimate didn't make you tell a supplier I pulled property from a deal I never approved. I was trying to explain why everything fell apart. You were trying to explain it without saying you counted on me giving you a house. I didn't want the house. You wanted its value. That's not the same. No, it's worse. You wanted me to keep the debt while you treated the equity as family property." He looked away. A car passed at the end of the street, tires whispering on damp pavement. "I thought you could afford to help," he said. "I did help. I mean with the business. I know what you mean. That's the problem. You only count help if it arrives in the form you wanted." He rubbed his palms against his jeans. "You had a whole career," he said. "Steady pay, housing, people saluting you and telling you that you mattered. Very few people saluted me, and most of them wanted something signed. You know what I'm saying? I know what you imagine." He picked up the thermal bag and began flattening it. "Mom kept your picture at the clinic," he said. "Every patient knew her daughter was an officer. After my restaurant closed, people asked me if I'd thought about getting a stable job like my sister. I didn't tell them to ask. No, you didn't have to." There it was, not a defense. Not exactly. A bruise Marcy had named before he could. "I'm sorry they used me to make you feel small," I said. He laughed without looking up. "That's almost a real apology. It's the only part that belongs to me." He stopped flattening the bag. My service was a job, I said. Mom wasn't wrong about the noun. I worked. I got paid. I earned benefits. But paid isn't the same as free. Scott said nothing. It cost years, I continued. It cost holidays. It cost my shoulder. It cost being the person everyone decided didn't need to be told when Mom fell. I chose the work, and I'm proud of it. But you don't get to call it just a job when you want to erase the cost, then call the money family money when you want the house it bought. He stared at the thermal bag in his hands. I didn't ask for a parade, I said. I wanted my family to receive what I gave without pretending it had come easily enough to give again. The front curtain shifted. Mom was watching from inside. Recognition did not feel like victory. It felt like finally setting down a box I had carried so long that my hands stayed curled after the weight was gone. Scott cleared his throat. I shouldn't have told people you pulled the property. No. And I should have told Paige about the debt. Yes. You're enjoying the short answers. A little. He exhaled through his nose. You also didn't have to make us leave. I waited. He frowned. What? That's the half apology. I apologized. You admitted 2 facts, then charged me for the admission. See? Assessment. You used my house after I told you to stop. What was I supposed to do? Give us more time. You had 90 days. More than that. There would never have been enough time because time wasn't the thing you needed. His face hardened again, but only briefly. Money, he said. Limits. He looked toward the house. Mom said I can't move back. She told me. You happy about that? No? Relieved? Yes. He nodded as though the honesty had cost us both something fair. We finished sorting the boxes. Dave got the tabletop burner for $50 after all. Scott posted the chafing dishes and menu holders online. The broken thermal bag went into the trash. When everything was done, he reached behind the passenger seat of his truck and took out a small white envelope. He held it toward me. I opened it. 2 brass keys slid into my palm. One was worn dull at the edges. The other was newer, its teeth sharp and bright. You found them, I said. I knew where they were. I looked up. The original was in my tool chest. The copy was in my catering bag. Why did you say you lost them? He shoved his hands into his pockets. If I gave them back, it meant I wasn't coming back. You can visit without having a key. That isn't the same. No. He watched the keys in my hand. I'm not asking to move in. I know. I just wanted you to know that. Thank you. He moved toward the truck, then stopped. For what it's worth, I know the Army didn't buy the house. I waited. You did, he said. It wasn't everything. It was specific. Drive safe, I said. He left without hugging me. That was right for where we were. Mom came outside after his truck disappeared. She looked at the keys. Both of them? Both. I didn't know he had 2. Neither did I until Paige told me. Mom sat on the front step. I helped him believe you'd give in, she said. Every time he asked what you would say, I told him you always took care of us. I did. I made that sound unlimited. Yes. She folded her hands in her lap. I'm sorry for that, too. I sat beside her. Across the driveway, the dark blue door to the garage apartment stood open. My couch was inside, along with Mr. Cho's sister's table and the one-fork kitchen collection Paige still found offensive. I found something in the basement, Mom said. She went inside and returned carrying the wooden gather sign. Scott had repaired the split corner and replaced the hanger. A new screw rested in the groove along the back. Where do you want it? She asked. I looked at the empty spot beside the front door. Not there. Her face fell slightly. I pointed toward the patio. Put it near the table. That's where people actually gather. She smiled. That's annoyingly practical. I come by it honestly. We mounted the sign beside the back door. Mom held the level while I drove the screw. She told me it was crooked. It wasn't. I adjusted it anyway. My apartment lease ended the following Friday. Andre helped with the boxes after making me swear not to lift anything over 20 pounds. Sandra brought pizza and labeled each slice by topping because, she said, I respected clear supply chains. Mom stayed out of the garage apartment until the last box was inside. Then she knocked on the connecting door. I opened it. She held 2 mugs of coffee. "May I come in?" "You don't have to ask every time." "Yes, I do." "No, you have to knock." I knocked. "And then you ask. That's how doors work." I stepped aside. "Come in." She placed 1 mug on my table and looked around. Dad's photograph stood on the bookcase. The medal certificate remained on the shelf beside it. My boots were by the dark blue door. 1 wooden spoon sat in a jar on the counter. "You need curtains," she said. "I just moved in. People can see straight through. People can see a 43-year-old woman drinking coffee. They don't need that kind of access." I laughed. She sat at the table and wrapped both hands around her mug. Through the window, morning light fell across the backyard and caught the white letters on the sign by the patio. For the first time, Bellwether Lane held all of us without pretending we belonged there in the same way. Mom had her home. Scott had limits he could resent and still survive. Paige had work that paid her. I had a room no one had kept for me because I had finally chosen it for myself. Mom lifted her mug. "To being home?" I touched mine to hers. "To knocking first." She rolled her eyes. But the next morning, she knocked again,